Africa is the place where the body of the first man was found. My daddy says that makes it a place where all people originated from. I'm from Africa, you from Africa, you African booty scratcher. I'm always reaching. We make niggas disappear like that triangle out Bermuda. They can't find his body, but they know that I'm the shooter. I say cut my sentence in half, and I spread a little rumor. Yeah, well, you can look in Oklahoma if you want to find them sooner.
Living day by day in my hood on the spot. See the same old thing, same dope fiends, cops. Just the average day in the streets, California. 5-0, find a young girl dead round the corner. Mommy's on her knees, she had tears in her eyes, and nobody knew why the young girl had to die. People look ashamed, it's been like this for years. Bloody sheets on her body, face wet from her mommy's tears. She couldn't have been over 4 or 5. And if mommy was in base, she would still be alive. But now the street is a place, she could be swallowed by death. Brothers taking each other's lives and going to rest in peace. I wonder if heaven got together. My cousin died last year, and I still can't let go. I walk the streets of my city, of my neighborhood, seeing dope fiends living off canned goods. 15 niggas on the corner, and niggas die young in California. 5-0 get a dope case and flaunt it. Have your ass on America's Most Wanted. But I don't slang or either gangbang. If all my old school homies do the same thing, I still got love cause you gotta live, so you can give and raise a family, G. But you gotta do your best slinging D-O-P-E. So keep a grip on yourself and stay mellow. And welcome to the ghetto. 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 From across the seas comes cocaine. But you never seen a black man fly the plane. Look at the news, a young black death. Was it drug related? Take a guess. I flash when I look in the mirror black, cause my reflection is a 9mm gat. I think about genocide and have thoughts on my homies who died. Everybody backstabbing, but I ain't the one to talk, I'm in the gap. Death give a shit about your color, but yet I see more dead young brothers. I'm going crazy out here, seeing 24 brothers die by the end of the year. And I still gotta deal with the 5-0. And I stopped selling dope in 9-0. But if it came to it, I probably still do it. Put a 9 in my drawers, get straight to it. I hope that I never see the day that I get 20 years for a cake. BK8 as a key to open up the door for the more money. But I ain't gotta do that, G. Cause I'm down with the FA to the C, to the U, to the LTY, G-Nut, extra large, and SPI, CE, making niggas feel like Jello. And welcome to the ghetto. Welcome to the ghetto. Welcome to the ghetto. Welcome to the ghetto.
Ayana, what did you say? Found a place for you to board upstream. It's good and solid up there. Didn't you speak to him in Seminole, sir? That's one of the riddles, Captain. He was born a slave, raised a Seminole. Now he works for the American Army.
I push fars in my family, only got it, so I trust and bust 50 at those who want to try to cross us. I'll be running slash from here to Japan. No money, no comprehending. Versus from the black Mexican. Moving yeah every day on your tracks, man. Important, extorting money laundering. I'll be running slash from here to Japan. No money, no comprehending. Versus from the black Mexican.
What it do? What it do? What it do? It's your host, Vino the Most. Back for another classic in the book of the SGI Talks. And this chapter right here is looking at American history with NYTN and why Africans look at FBA as a slave. Make sure that you're polled up and rolled up. You know, I'm glad that you showed up to comment, like, subscribe, tell a friend, and do it again. Now, how I came across this YouTuber, nice looking young lady, NYTN. She been doing a lot of genealogy history and a lot of deep dives into her own family history, but also revealing American history. You know what I'm saying? So we finna take a look at what she got going on and how she kind of looking at history, and how it all kind of play in with FBAs also. You know what I'm saying? How it all plays with the FBAs also. So let me take a look one moment. Get this back popping. And we starting off with this right here. Just like I say, make sure you pulled up and rolled up. You know, I'm glad that you showed up to comment, like, subscribe, tell a friend, and do it again.
There are these giant stone heads in Mexico with what a lot of people say have African features. DNA studies showing African genetic markers in indigenous Mexican populations that are thousands of years old, not from the slave trade, but ancient. And also Egyptian mummies with cocaine in their systems, and cocaine only grew in the Americas. So either all of this evidence is fake, or ancient people were way more connected than we've been told. Hi, I'm Danielle Romero. Thank you so much for being with me here on my channel, where we talk about American identity and family stories. I'm excited to dive into some mysteries around identity, American identity with you. But first, if you would like to connect with me off of YouTube, come join me over at patreon.com. All right, so let's start with the guy who kicked off this whole mess. Professor Greg Wiggin from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. In 2018, so this is not that long ago, Wiggin sued UNC. He claimed they denied him a promotion to full professorship because he was Black. He said it was racial discrimination. The case went to court. He lost. But 2 years later, in June 2020, Wiggin published a paper in a journal called the Urban Review. The paper was titled Early Pioneers of the Americas, the Role of the Olmecs in Urban Education and Social Studies Curriculum.
The sights, the sounds, the styles.
This was a lesson plan that was arguing that schools should teach kids that the Olmecs, the ancient Mexican civilization that dates back to 1,500 years before Christ, were actually Black Africans who crossed the Atlantic and established one of the first major civilizations in the Americas.
So that's what I've been pointing out as far as whenever I've been doing these last little things about Mexico and that area, the Mayans, the Tabasco area, and how the Mexicans down there say that the Black people is from there. That bringing Black people on the slave ship back in the 1500s, and it's supposed to be a shipwreck. There is no historical documents. And the Mexicans are saying that the Black people is from there. That's what the Mexicans are saying in Mexico.
Well, within months, the journal had retracted that paper. The journal said this: the theory that the Olmecs were Black Africans is not substantiated according to the current Mesoamerican archaeology and genetic evidence. Translation here: this was wrong, we shouldn't have published it. But here's where it gets interesting. Wiggin and his co-authors refused to accept their retraction. They said, well, we stand by our work. And that's when it exploded into this massive controversy. So indigenous scholars came out swinging, and they said that the Black Olmec theory erases indigenous achievement, and that it was racist to claim that Native Americans couldn't have built their own civilization, and that it was Africans instead. But supporters of Wiggin said that academia has always suppressed evidence of Black African achievement, and that this is just more Eurocentric gatekeeping. So who's right? So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you the evidence that people like Wiggin point to, and I'm going to show you why skeptics say it's wrong. And then I'm going to show you the parts that I don't think really add up on either side, because this isn't about proving Wiggin right or wrong. This is about asking, why does this question make people so angry? And what are we not being told? So let's start with the most famous piece of evidence themselves, the Olmec heads. Okay, if you've never seen the Olmec heads, you've got to see them. They're incredible. They're impressive. They're these massive stone sculptures. Some of them weigh up to 50 tons. That's almost 100,000 pounds. They were carved from single blocks of basalt rock. They estimate like maybe 3,000 years ago in what's now Veracruz, Mexico. So far there are 17 of these heads, and they all depict human heads wearing what looks like helmets or headgear of some kind. And the detailing is really extraordinary. The individual facial features, expressions, even what you might see like headbands or braided hair, things like that. Now, here's what started this whole controversy. A lot of people look at those heads and say, those look African. So I'm going to describe what people point to, and you can decide for yourself. So the heads have broad noses and full lips, and certain facial proportions, maybe wider faces, specific jawlines. Some of them do have what appears to be tightly curled or braided hair, and the overall features, to a lot of observers, they say these are stereotypically African more than indigenous. So the question is, are they seeing something real, or are they projecting what they want to see? Because here's the counter argument. A lot of these same features still appear in modern indigenous people from that region. Broad noses and full lips are not exclusively African features, right? And if you go to Veracruz today, you will see people who look a lot like those heads. So the heads alone, I would say these are ambiguous. You can interpret them either way. Let me tell you something weird about these heads that does not get talked about. The basalt rock that they're carving from, it doesn't exist anywhere near where the heads are found. And these weren't just carved, they were transported over 60 miles over mountains through the jungles 3,000 years ago. So we're talking about moving 50-ton boulders 60 miles without wheels, without metal tools. The Olmecs did not have horses or oxen. So the question isn't, could indigenous people have done this? Obviously they could. The evidence is right there. But the question is, were they doing it alone? Or were there outside influences?
With Google Play Games, you can play unlocked. Unlock bigger screens.
So here's another thing that's weird about this story. The Olmecs had one of the earliest writing systems in the Americas. So we found inscriptions on stone monuments that date back to 900 BC, and the script is still mostly undeciphered, but it's clearly a sophisticated writing system. So some researchers have claimed that the Olmec symbols look similar to ancient African scripts, particularly from West Africa, like ancient Libyan scripts. Mainstream archaeology says these are coincidental similarities, that humans independently develop similar symbols all over the world. Okay, so the heads are ambiguous. The symbols might be a coincidence. What about the DNA? Because this is where things get really hard to explain away. All right, so let's talk about genetics. Scientists can look at genetic markers, specific patterns in your DNA, and trace them back thousands of years. Okay, so different populations have different markers. European markers are going to look different than African markers, which look different from Native American markers. So when geneticists are studying the indigenous population, they're expecting to find Native American markers, right? But here's what they found in some indigenous Mexican populations. African genetic markers that are old. We're not talking like slave trade, DNA, or colonial period. We're talking about like genetic signatures that suggest contact thousands of years ago. Specifically, there's a haplogroup, a genetic lineage called haplogroup A. And I've talked a little bit about haplogroups on this channel and shared mine with you. So This is a common haplogroup in Africa, and it shows up in some indigenous populations in Mexico at frequencies that are kind of hard to explain. So the mainstream explanation is this, that either, one, it's contamination from more recent African ancestry that's being misstated. Two, it could be an ancient marker that actually came across the Bering Strait in Asia, since humans all originally came from Africa anyway. Or three, it's just statistical noise in the data. So these are the possible mainstream explanations for this haplogroup. So let's talk about something even weirder. And this is where we move beyond just the Olmecs into this broader evidence of maybe transatlantic contact. In 1992, a German scientist named Svetlana Belavanova was analyzing ancient Egyptian mummies. She was testing the remains for various substances to learn about ancient life. And she found cocaine, nicotine, in multiple mummies dating back 3,000 years ago. Now here's the problem. Cocaine comes from cocoa plants, which only grew in South America, and nicotine comes from tobacco, which also only grew in the Americas. So these plants did not exist in Africa or Europe until after Columbus. So how did ancient Egyptians have cocaine and tobacco in their systems 3,000 years ago? When she published her findings, the archaeology establishment went nuclear on her. They said her results were impossible, that the mummies had been contaminated, or the tests were wrong, or she made it up. But she wasn't some fringe researcher. She was a forensic toxicologist with decades of experience, and so she stood by her results. So the labs tested other mummies. Guess what? They found the same thing. Cocaine, nicotine, in mummies that were thousands of years old. Now, the explanations offered for this were, one, modern contamination, but how? Multiple mummies, multiple labs, same results. Two, that ancient plants produce similar compounds that existed in Africa, but we haven't found them yet, which I guess is possible, but we've never found evidence of those plants existing. Or three, there was a transatlantic trade, which could rewrite everything we know about ancient history. Well, you can guess what numbers the mainstream archaeology went with, explanation 1 and 2. And I said, we'll figure it out eventually. Let's move on. Nothing to see here. But they haven't figured it out. And the cocaine is still there and the nicotine is still there. And nobody has a good explanation. And it's not just cocaine. There's a lot more. Thor Heyerdahl was a Norwegian explorer who in 1970 built a boat out of papyrus reeds, the same material that the ancient Egyptians used. And he sailed across the Atlantic from Morocco to Barbados. His trip took 57 days. The boat survived.
Are you wearing 7 layers and still freezing your man nipples?
You need the new 300.
And he proved that ancient people could have crossed the Atlantic using period-appropriate technology. Now, mainstream archaeology says, sure, it's possible, but there's no evidence that they did it. So, it's possible, but they didn't do it, so it doesn't matter. But here's what I find interesting. Heyerdahl has been described in some declassified documents as having connections to the CIA. Why would the CIA care about ancient transatlantic contact theories? What's the strategic interest even controlling this narrative? I don't know. It's weird. It's outside my pay grade, which is 0. So here's another one. In the Andes Mountains, on a lake between Bolivia and Peru, indigenous boat builders still make reed boats, like reeds, using these ancient techniques. And the boats look almost identical to the ancient Egyptian reed boats, like same design, same construction methods, same materials. Coincidence? Maybe, right? Humans independently invent similar technologies all the time. Maybe not. Maybe there was contact. Maybe there was knowledge spread. We don't know, but the similarity is striking. So here's what we got. We have Olmec heads that might look African, cocaine in Egyptian mummies, DNA anomalies that are hard to explain, proof that the ancient transatlantic travel was possible, and unexplained technological similarities. Now, does all of this prove ancient Africans or Phoenicians or Egyptians came to America? No. When there's a lot of smoke, there's usually a fire. So why is even investigating this so dangerous? So when the Wigan paper came out in 2020, some of the loudest opposition came from indigenous scholars, and their argument, I think, is really powerful. They're saying that, claiming that the Olmecs were Africans erases their history. And you know what? I understand that point, because throughout history, when indigenous people built something impressive, let's say pyramids, stone cities, complex astronomical systems, Europeans would sometimes point out they couldn't have done this. It must have been ancient aliens or Atlantis or Egyptian, like anyone else, right? Anyone else. And so I think that's a fair criticism. I think it needs to be taken seriously. But then there's the other side, where Afrocentric scholars and researchers say, Western academia has always downplayed or erased African achievement. And so finding evidence of the possibility that Africans might have accomplished these feats, like crossing the Atlantic 3,000 years ago, gets dismissed as impossible or fringe or whatever. I think that's also an interesting point. So here's the problem. Both sides are responding to real historical injuries and injustices. And I think that makes having an honest conversation about the evidence really difficult. But here's what I keep coming back to. Why can't we at least talk about the investigation, the evidence, without becoming a war? Why can't we say Indigenous Americans built incredible civilizations, full stop? That's not up for debate. And also there was contact with other cultures. Maybe there was trade, exchange, or even a few explorers who came, visited, and left. Why does it have to be either or, right? Why can't it be both? The Vikings reached America around 1000 AD. We know this. I'm going to do a video on this. There's archaeological evidence. There's genetic evidence, like a Native American woman in Iceland, that I'm going to be talking about. And why are we suggesting that maybe other transatlantic contact is treated differently? Here's what really bothers me. It feels like there is this institutional resistance. If the evidence is so obviously wrong, why not let's just study it and prove that it's wrong? So let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Because I think what's happening here is more complex than just like, is this evidence real or is it fake? History isn't just about facts. It's about identity, about who we are, where we come from, where we're going. And whoever controls the narrative about the past controls something important in our present. I'm saying that this is a political reality, and that political reality makes honest investigation really difficult.
Throw it as hard as you want. Go on. Watching it zip away feels like it might just keep going, right? Nope.
Times. But here's what concerns me the most. I think we're reaching a point, or we have reached a point, at least in America, where certain questions can't be asked, not because they've been thoroughly investigated and answered, but because asking them is politically or socially dangerous. And that's not science, that is ideology. So look, maybe the Olmecs were 100% Indigenous American with no outside contact. That is entirely possible. Follow the evidence where it leads us. And then there's the weird CIA connection with Thor Heyerdahl. Why would intelligence agencies care about ancient contact theories? Here's one possibility. If you can control the narrative about the past, you can influence the present. That matters for land, that matters for resources, political power. And I'm not saying that there is a massive conspiracy out there, but what I am saying is that governments and institutions, they do have a vested interest in controlling historical narratives. And that makes me wonder, what else are we not being told? So I've shown you some evidence, shown you both sides of this controversy and why I think this gets so complicated. Now I want you to tell me what you think. I think ancient people are more connected, and they were more connected than we've been told. I think there was probably transatlantic contact that happened occasionally, not like a massive colonization or sustained trade routes, but occasional voyages. People maybe get blown off course. And maybe when they arrived, they encountered these advanced indigenous civilizations that have been thriving for thousands of years. Maybe there was exchange, ideas, technology, maybe even people integrated into these societies. Kind of like what happens now. I don't think this is either or. I think it's both and. Here's why I think it matters for us here. If ancient people were more connected than we thought, what does that mean for your own ancestry, for your own history? How many of us have done DNA tests and found unexpected results, or ancestry in places that our family never talked about, made no sense? We're like, this is crazy. This can't be real. History is messier than the textbooks make it seem. Populations mixed. People traveled farther than we thought. Identities are more fluid than we thought. Your ancestors left traces in your DNA, in archaeological sites, and stories that were written down, and stories that were meant to be forgotten. And I think maybe some of those traces suggest connections we don't understand yet. The Olmec heads are still there. The DNA anomalies are still unexplained, and there's still cocaine in those mummies. The evidence is still there. History is bigger and more strange and more connected than we've been told. And maybe it's time we start asking the questions we're not supposed to ask. So if this video made you think differently about our history, please hit the subscribe button, because I want to keep digging into some of these mysteries that we are supposed to investigate.
So it seems like she on point with some of the same stuff that I've been pointing out in my chapters in the book of the SGI talks, all my little videos. I'm pointing out black people being found, black people over here, black Indians, and how a lot of other, black people is pointing out things too. You don't understand, the Aborigines, all that. And it's kind of refreshing to see, the other side kind of saying it also.
Claiming Pocahontas' ancestry were accepted as white, but actual families, wealthy white families, claiming Pocahontas' ancestry were accepted as white, but actual Native Americans who had documented tribal connections and community ties were rejected and reclassified as Black or colored. So if your last name was on this list, your Native ancestry claim was not only rejected, your birth certificate was now changed from Indian to colored. He believed that the Native American tribes in Virginia had intermarried with Black people generations ago. Therefore, anyone who claimed to have Native American ancestry, he said, was actually mixed race Black trying to pass as Indian to get around segregation laws. This was his theory. He called them mongrels. He called them near whites sometimes. He said they were striving to pass. He made a list. This is a real document. It's called Surnames by Counties and Cities of Mixed Negroid Virginia Families Striving to Pass as Indian or White. The state of Virginia started reclassifying these people as colored, not Native American, colored. The onus is on you to prove that you're white, which is, and I cannot stress this enough, that is impossible. It was impossible to prove this. Suddenly, these families had a big problem because the law said 1 drop of non-white blood makes you not white. So are the Randolphs not white now? Are Virginia's most powerful families about to be barred from marrying other white people? Are their kids going to be kicked out of the good schools? Are they going to be buried in colored cemeteries? No, of course not. That's why the Pocahontas exception exists. People want to say in the comments all the time, you Americans, you're obsessed with race. Why are you so obsessed? Dude, we're not obsessed with race. This is written into our history, and then it wasn't taught. I'm so serious about this. It's a hit list of family names. Oh, why are you guys so obsessed with race? Look at this freaking document. Hi, I'm Danielle Romero. Thank you so much for being with me here on my channel where we talk about American identity and family stories. And before we jump back into this video, if you'd like to join me over at Patreon, get off of YouTube. We can direct message, we can chat. It's patreon.com/NYTN. Or you could send me a coffee at coffee.com/NYTN13. Are you white? Legally white? Are you legally white? In 1924, the state of Virginia decided to settle this question once and for all because it is not a simple question and not a simple answer legally with a new law. And the law said if you had even 1 drop of Black blood, and we're talking 1 ancestor, at least 5 generations back, you were Black. Period. End of story. Unless you can prove that you were related to Pocahontas. Yes, the Pocahontas. Then you're fine. You're white. Carry on. I'm serious. Virginia wrote this exception into their racial purity law specifically for people who could trace their bloodline to a 12-year-old Powhatan girl from the 1600s. This is going to get real wild. It's going to get real wild. So before you keep going, let me know where you are watching this from. I'd love to know what state you're from or what country you're from and how many people we have from Virginia in particular, or maybe if you have Virginian ancestry. So this wasn't just a weird footnote that nobody was paying attention to. You know, sometimes laws get put into place and they're just packed into other stuff and nobody knows. No. This exception destroyed families, but it also saved some families. It created an entire underground industry of genealogists who would, for the right price, discover that, yes, you definitely had the Pocahontas connection. Don't worry about it. And this also meant that in Virginia, your legal race could change overnight based on which story your family could prove. Today, we're going to talk about the Pocahontas exception, how it worked, who it protected, who it destroyed, and how DNA testing 80 years later, you know what happens if people start taking these tests, revealed that most of the people who used it were lying the whole time. Let's get into it. So, November 14th, 1924, small town in Virginia, Rockbridge County, up in the Shenandoah Valley.
With Google Play Games, you can play unlocked. Unlock your game here and here.
Really pretty area. I've been to this area before. Mountains, farms, just like small town vibes. So nice. So a woman named Atha Sorrells walks into the county clerk's office. She's there to get a marriage license. She wants to marry a man named Robert Painter. Maybe they grew up together. Maybe their families knew each other. It's like a 5-minute process. You fill out the form, you pay the fee, boom, you're done. So the clerk's name is A.T. Shields. Shields looks at Atha's application. Then he looks at her. Then he looks back at the application. He's like, no. Not like come back tomorrow or like I'm about to go to lunch. Just no. So Atha thinks there's been a mistake. Maybe she filled out the form wrong. Maybe she missed something. So she's looking it over and she's like, well, what's wrong? What did I miss? And A.T. Shields, the county clerk, tells her he has, quote, reason to believe that she's not of a pure white race. Like, let's let that sink in. This random county bureaucrat, this random clerk, decided based on something that Atha Sorrells was not white enough to marry a white man. So we don't know what that something was. Maybe someone in town gossiped about her family. Maybe there was a rumor that was floating around. He saw the last name. Or maybe Shields just did not like her appearance. Okay, maybe she got a little too much sun that day. The law did not require the clerk to explain that feeling. He didn't need evidence, actually. He didn't need to hold a hearing. He was just able to just say, no, denied. And if A.T. Shields could decide that you weren't pure white, your marriage to a white person would be illegal. I've covered this on my channel a lot last year. A ton of videos about this whole time in the United States. Not that long ago, only 101 years. Now, if A.T. Shields decided that you weren't white, then if you married a white person, not only was it illegal, it was felony illegal. You go to prison. So Atha's sitting there in this office, thought she's like bride to be, can't wait to get married, probably now in complete shock. And Shields slides a piece of paper across the desk to her. Okay. He says, you can appeal this. You can take me to court. She has 30 days. So Atha Sorrells hired a lawyer and she sued the county clerk. I have the actual petition to show you, and I can leave a link to it. Atha Sorrells versus A.T. Shields, clerk petition for mandamus, November 14th, 1924. So she's taking the small town government employee to court for just the right to get married. The right to get married. And to understand why this is happening, why she had to prove her racial purity to a county clerk, we have to talk about the laws that made this possible. So quick context. So I've done deep dives on Virginia's 1924 Racial Integrity Act before. I did them a year ago. I can link to those videos if you want that. But this is what you need to know right now for this story. Virginia's law said you couldn't marry a white person if you had any trace whatsoever, this is without a DNA test, of non-Caucasian blood. Not a significant amount, not a noticeable percentage, just any. So if you have one ancestor that goes back 6 generations, that is enough. That's the one drop, right? The clerk did not need to prove this, though. You had to prove that you didn't have it. Okay, the onus is on you to prove that you're white. Which is, and I cannot stress this enough, that is impossible. It was impossible to prove this. You are asking someone to document every single ancestor going back 200, 300 years without the internet, maybe without even a means to travel across to the next town, to their library, their records, no DNA test, right? No internet forums, no hopping on Facebook to message someone. And you're going to prove that not one of your ancestors had a single drop of non-white blood. Think about this too. Like there were so many times where libraries would be burned to the ground. Courthouses get flooded. People didn't keep perfect genealogies, right? What are you supposed to do, right? This is an impossible situation. But that was your burden of proof. You had to prove a negative across centuries of history or you couldn't get married. Unless you qualified for the exception. There's always an exception. This case goes before Judge Henry W. Holt, Circuit Court of Rockbridge County, Virginia. Judge Holt, from what I can tell, is from he's a fairly like, typical Virginia judge in 1924, which means he's probably not going to be our hero here. And sure enough, he starts his ruling like this. Quote, I am in cordial sympathy with the general purpose of the statute. Whether it be based upon pride, prejudice, or instinct, we look upon ourselves as a sceptered race and stand for its preservation and all its integrity. Okay, racist, obviously, 1924 Virginia. Like, we're not shocked. But then he writes, but the statute in judgment goes far beyond anything that has heretofore been enacted.
For years, nearly every solution for erectile dysfunction has focused on one thing, blood flow. And while
So translation here, he's like, actually, this law is insane even by our own standards. Then Judge Holt does something I genuinely did not expect when I was reading this document. He explains in detail why this law is unenforceable nonsense. So this is a direct quote. I could put this on here for you guys. I'll link to it. He said, quote, in 25 generations, so 25 generations of ancestors. So for you to your parents, that's one generation. So we're going really far back. One has 32 millions of grandfathers, not to speak of grandmothers, assuming there's no intermarriage. Half of the men who fought at Hastings were my grandfathers, he says. Some of them were probably hanged and some knighted. Who can tell? Certainly in some instances, there was an alien strain. I think he means like foreign strain. Beyond peradventure, I cannot prove that there was not. So here the judge is doing math. Okay, he's like, okay, there's like millions of ancestors going back this far. So if you go back 25 generations, you have a bazillion ancestors. And he's saying, I, Judge Henry W. Holt, sitting judge in Virginia, cannot prove that all of these ancestors were racially pure. Nobody can prove that. And then he writes this document. Quote, Alice never got herself into a deeper tangle. So he's comparing Virginia's racial law to Alice in Wonderland. A sitting judge in 1924 just called the state's flagship racial purity law. Crazy, upside down world. But there's more. He doesn't strike down the law. He can't because he's a circuit court judge. He's not the Supreme Court. He doesn't have that authority. But what he does do is he points out an exception. The law says you can't have any trace of non-Caucasian blood except, and this is the text of the law, except if you have 1/16 or less the blood of American Indians. So Judge Holt looks at eighth as evidence. She brought 130 years of family records. I don't know how this woman did it. Birth certificates, marriage license, family Bibles, whatever she brought, buried in there. And she says, actually, there is a small amount of Native American ancestry, but it's under 1/16. So she qualifies for the exception. Judge Holt writes, quote, the license should issue. She wins. She gets to marry Robert Painter. But here's what Judge Holt doesn't say in his ruling. Here's what he's not mentioning. Who is that exception really for? We have to rewind 300 years. 1607, Jamestown, Virginia, first permanent English settlement in North America. You know the story, right? Or at least the Disney version, that's wrong. John Smith, Pocahontas, Colors of the Wind, like that whole thing. I always loved that movie as a kid, at least the beginning part. The second part scared me. But the real story is actually way darker, way more complicated, way less musical. But that's not what we're here for today. What we're here for is what happened after that. So in 1614, Pocahontas, whose real name was Matoka, by the way, if people pronounce that differently, converted to Christianity. She took the name Rebecca, and she married an English tobacco planter named John Rolfe, not John Smith. I know it's very sad if you've only watched the Disney movie. It was John Rolfe. They had a son named Thomas Rolfe. Thomas survived into adulthood. He had kids whose kids had kids. Here we go. And by the 1800s, some of the wealthiest and most powerful families in Virginia were claiming to be descended from Pocahontas and John Rolfe. The Randolphs, the Bowlings, the Branches, the Lewises. These were the first families of Virginia. Old money, political power. These people ran the state. Every state has these families, right? And for 200 years, being descended from Pocahontas was a flex. This was exotic. It was romantic. It proved your family had been in Virginia since literally the beginning, right? So now you have a claim to this land. A claim, I'm putting in air quotes. It showed you had that frontier spirit. You're connected to the land, like you belong here. But then March 1924, Virginia passes the Racial Integrity Act. Suddenly, these families had a big problem because the law said 1 drop of non-white blood makes you not white. And these families had been bragging about having Native American blood for 2 centuries.
Watch what coffee does to your waistline.
Do these drinks make you fat? That's
So are the Randolphs not white now? Are Virginia's most powerful families about to be barred from marrying other white people? Are their kids going to be kicked out of the good schools? Are they going to be buried in colored cemeteries? No, of course not. That's why the Pocahontas exception exists. The law was written with a specific carve-out. If you had 1/16 or less Native American blood, 1/16 is not a lot. This was called the Pocahontas Clause. And yes, so this is what people literally called it. It was designed to protect these families, but it gets twisted, believe it or not. So because the first families of Virginia were having genealogists document their Pocahontas connection, and you better believe they had genealogists on the retainer, right? There were still Native American communities living in Virginia at the time. I'm not going to be able, I never say the names right, so please correct me. But the Monacan people, the Pamunkey, the Chickahominy, the Mattapony, these people documented tribal ancestry, people whose family have been in Virginia for thousands of years, not 300, thousands, right? The state of Virginia started reclassifying these people as colored, not Native American, colored, like black. Same or more Native blood, now classified as a completely different legal race. People want to say in the comments all the time, you Americans, you're obsessed with race. Why are you so obsessed? Dude, we're not obsessed with race. This is written into our history, and then it wasn't taught. And so a lot of us, including me, we are kind of shining a light on stuff that's been hidden for 2 generations, 3 generations, and we're shocked, but not really, right? Now, why would these people be colored, not considered Native American? Well, because of one man, Walter Plecker. We did a video on him, actually a lot. So I'm not going to get too deep into it, but Walter Plecker ran Virginia's Bureau of Vital Statistics from 1912 to 1946, so right during this time. And he was in charge of every birth certificate. He was overseeing it. Death certificate, marriage license, like he's doing all that stuff. And he had a theory. He believed that the Native American tribes in Virginia had intermarried with Black people generations ago. For anyone who claimed to have Native American ancestry, he said, was actually mixed race Black trying to pass as Indian to get around segregation laws. This was his theory. He called them mongrels. He called them near whites sometimes. He said they were striving to pass, and he made a list. So this is a real document that I've shared a bunch of times. It's called Surnames by Counties and Cities of Mixed Negroid Virginia Families Striving to Pass as Indian or White. I'm so serious about this. It's a hit list of family names. Oh, why are you guys so obsessed with race? Look at this freaking document. This is a real document. Now, maybe your family history was very different than mine, but my family at this time did fit in this list. They did fit in this list. And a lot of our history, a lot of our stories, even our last names were changed, lied about, not passed down to me. And I'm now, as a mother, trying to piece together as much as I can about my family story because of stuff like this. So like this has real world impact. And even if it didn't impact anyone who's alive today, do we just not study history because it doesn't impact the guy sitting next to me on the bus? Like, that would be ludicrous. But like, how much more should we study it if it's impacting the guy who's sitting next to me on the bus, right? So Plecker sent copies of this list to every county clerk, every school registrar, every hospital, every draft board in Virginia. So if your last name was on this list, your Native ancestry claim was not only rejected, your birth certificate was now changed from Indian to colored. And I know I'm going to get in trouble for this. If you've been on my channel for more than a year, you know that I've had demonetized videos, flagged videos from YouTube. Those are 2 different things. Also banned videos for using the word colored, because my great uncle, my Uncle Danny, who I've interviewed on here, his birth certificate says colored, and other family members too, and I've shared those documents on here. And you're not allowed to use that word.
Apparently, it is as bad as the F word, according to YouTube. I'm for real. And, it just really burns me because I see such trash on YouTube. I see literally pornographic material sent to people. People are using that. Actually, just absolute trash. And I'm just like, here's a document from my family that says colored. And YouTube's like, nah, nah. And you can see here, like, not a lot has changed. So if your name was on this list, if your last name was on this list, you're roasted. Like, your marriage could be annulled. Your kids could be removed from their schools. You couldn't be treated at white hospitals. Like this, I did a video on the guy who was the head of the NAACP and the story of his father. He had been hit by a car and he had to be brought further away to a non-white hospital where he then passed away because he was not able to be treated at this other hospital. I mean, this is all serious consequences. So I want to be absolutely clear about what's happening here first. Wealthy white families claiming Pocahontas ancestry were accepted as white. But actual Native Americans who had documented tribal connections and community ties were rejected and reclassified as Black or colored. Possibly the same amount of Native blood, more Native blood, but completely different outcomes. So the Pocahontas exception was not protecting Native heritage. It was protecting specific families. And if you couldn't afford a genealogist to fight Walter Plecker, if you didn't have the documents, you were cooked. There's nothing you could do.
What burns belly fat faster, cardio or the Power Ab Stimulator?
2 hours of cardio burns 600 calories.
So what do you do when your entire life, maybe your marriage, your kids' education, your job, where you can live, where you can be buried, depends on having the right kind of ancestry? You get creative. So between 1924 and 1967, I just have to pause there. My mom was born 1961. Okay, again, this is recent. A whole industry sprang up around the Racial Integrity Act. So genealogists who specialize in finding, or let's be honest, creating family trees that would satisfy Walter Plecker and his clerks. So now we're manipulating documents. Now, some of this was legitimate research. People would dig through courthouse records for you, go through the old family Bibles, letters, wills, trying to figure it out, but some of it was less legitimate. And so a lot of these genealogical records, though, from the 1600s, 1700s are kind of a mess because the British burned Richmond during the Revolutionary War, so records are gone. Then the Civil War happens, more records are gone. And sometimes the records that survived were just like not that great or they're flat out wrong, right? Because census takers in the 1800s would just guess. They look at you and they're like, okay, you're mulatto here, you're white here, you're Indian here, you're Black here. This has happened in my family over and over and over again. Like, not even a question. My great-grandmother was born in Louisiana, 1900. Her census, when she was 10, she was mulatto, but her parents were both censused as Black 10 years before she was born, and then later censused as white. And parts of that family have also been censused as colored or Indian. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense, right? So which one's true? Well, whichever one the government needs to be true, right? The Pocahontas bloodline was already a mess. So you couldn't even say, well, I'm gonna take this exception. Because Thomas Rolfe, the son of Pocahontas and John Rolfe, had one daughter, Jane Rolfe. Jane married Robert Bowling. They had one son, John Bowling. Then he had 6 kids. That's it. 6 kids. I say that's it. 6 kids. That's a lot now, but it wasn't back then. But from those 6 kids, by the 1920s, there were hundreds of families descend from Pocahontas. That's a lot of people claiming a very narrow bloodline. And were they all telling the truth? Probably not, right? But who can check? How do we check this? Walter Plecker was too busy harassing all of the other families to audit every first family's genealogy. I say first family, the big important Virginia families. This is where the law becomes truly perverse, because the Pocahontas exception was supposed to be about blood quantum, remember 1/16, about biology and percentages. It's like, how do you figure that out? In practice, it was just about paperwork. I've said this a bazillion times on my channel. American identity is paperwork. It's bureaucratic. That's what it is. And so if you had the right documents or you could create them, you were now white. The end, right? But if you didn't have them, you weren't. It's like so bizarre. It's so bizarre to me. So Ava Sorrells won her case because she did come up with 130 years of documentation and she could afford a lawyer, and most people couldn't do that. So some families had to make impossible choices. Maybe you moved to other states where the laws were different. My family certainly did that a bunch, or less enforced, or you changed your names. My family did that too. Some families cut ties with relatives who couldn't pass. Sadly, mine also did that. Just stopped talking to them. Pretended they didn't exist, started a new life, disappeared into whiteness, and never looked back. Literally, that is the reason I started this channel, looking for my family story. Finding Lola is my docuseries. It's a 4-part series, but I've also put a new version up that's just all 4 parts together. It's like an hour long. Going to Louisiana, trying to find my great-grandma Lola's story and who we really were. Some families disappeared into whiteness and never looked back. But some families did the opposite. They gave up trying to prove that they were white or Native American, and they disappeared into blackness because then at least they could stay together. This law stayed into effect till 1967. That's when Loving versus Virginia, I'm sure you know this court case, the Supreme Court case that legalized interracial marriage, finally struck down the Racial Integrity Act, but it did not end this. It did not end this. The damage had been done. Some families have been split for generations. Communities have been destroyed. People died not even knowing their family story. But then there's always more. In 2000, something happened that revealed just how absurd this whole thing had been. DNA testing. So in the early 2000s, genetic genealogy became accessible to the public. You could send in a cheek swab or spit in a vial, pay $100, and find out where your ancestors supposedly came from. And the researchers started testing people who claimed to descend from Pocahontas. The results, most of them did not have it. The bowling line, that narrow, well-documented line from Pocahontas and her great-grandchildren, turned out to be way less widespread than people had thought. So some families who had been rejected by Walter Plecker, who said they were lying about their Native heritage, who were reclassified as Black, turned out to be telling the truth. So by the time that the DNA testing came around, it was too late. So families have been separated, right? Communities are scattered. Maybe people lived out their whole life on the wrong side of a color line that was drawn based on paperwork that turned out to be false. Virginia did not apologize for the Racial Integrity Act until 2001. I was in high school when they apologized. Yeah, I'm not old. I'm turning 40 in a couple months. 2001. That's like 24 years ago, 25 years ago. Like, what? So some of the people who reclassified under that law are alive now. Their kids are alive. Their grandkids are growing up right now, like me here, dealing with family trees that do not make sense because someone 3 generations ago got kicked out or got ties cut just to survive. And the Pocahontas exception was not about protecting Native ancestry or heritage. It wasn't even about biology. It was about protecting people in power. Guess what? That's every law. Like, I am so politically done. Like, I do not trust anyone at this point. And I don't know how we could have in the first place. Just look at our history from just a little while ago. If you are wealthy and connected, you can claim Pocahontas and stay white, even if you didn't have the ancestry. It's not even about being white that's so important. It's that everything that came with that, right? The freedom to just choose your own adventure. But if you were poor and had no connections, your actual documented, maybe DNA now DNA confirmed ancestry, how'd you be classified as Black or colored? Same blood, different story, different life. This was a sorting mechanism, a way to decide who got to keep their power and who got pushed out. And that's why I say in this channel a lot, I really don't think that this is a left-right issue. I don't think it's like a Democrat-Republican issue. This is not even a black-white issue, I'm going to tell you that. This is about the people who have all of the power and the money, very few of them, and the rest of us. Like, there's so much infighting going on right now, and we should be sticking together because they don't want us to see that dichotomy. All the primary documents I showed you today are linked in the description, and if I forgot to listen, please let me know. But this is public record. This is history. I guarantee you it was.
So what I'm taking from it on that little bill right there is that everybody was mislabeled over here. talking about in the 1920s, to be able to prove you was white, you had to go back 5 generations. That's why I'll be taking a deep dive into history and be trying to read between the lines to see what's really going on.
The Bible, asking how to remove an entire group of people, actually Black people from the South. And I'm going to show you exactly how he did it. Physically, the Negro was at his highest day of development as a slave. From a dwarf, he was bred up to the full stature of manhood. He was well fed and clad in his labor in the fields of sunshine and fresh air and good sanitary conditions. This is probably one of the craziest things I've ever read. Sutherland is addressing a medical association in Memphis, Tennessee. He is, according to this, a white doctor, and he's advocating for the separation of the white and Black races for moral and medical reasons, regarding African Americans as an inferior race morally, intellectually, and medically. Hi, I'm Danielle Romero. Thank you so much for being with me here on my channel, where we talk about American identity and family stories. And I wanted to go through a primary source with you today that is a little shocking. It's shocking. And I'm not going to do my regular video script. Usually I have notes scribbled down. I have some, but I wanted to just go through the primary source with you because I think we're living in an era where, playing telephone, you play telephone as a kid. And it's so funny when you watch kids play telephone now, because if you, as the adult, if you're summer camp counselor or something, stuff like I've done, where you whisper it to the kid and then you see what goes around the circle. It's complete nonsense, but it comes back and it's super funny. It's so funny in that context. But when we're talking about passing down factual information, history, passing it down through generations, and that happens, that's not funny. That's serious, and we need to get back to the source. A primary source is a great way to do that. And primary sources is not they're unbiased, right? But it's us looking at what somebody actually said, their actual thoughts at that time. And so we're going to go to 1905, Memphis, Tennessee, and we're going to chat about this. If you love doing deep dives into hidden history, American identity, family stories, and you'd like to support me off of YouTube, which is awesome, please come over to Patreon at patreon.com/NYTN, or you can go send me a coffee. Literally, this is from you guys. We'll put the link in the comments. It's coffee.com/NYTN, KOFI, and literally a tip jar. And when I'm working on scripts or I'm up late researching, I drink a lot of coffee. So thank you so much for this. A doctor in 1905 quoted the Bible, asking how to remove an entire group of people, actually Black people from the South. And I'm going to show you exactly how he did it. So let's go over to the Library of Congress page first. I want to show you this document. Okay, I'm not great at screen sharing, but hopefully I can figure this out. So if you go to the Library of Congress, open this up. So it says loc.gov. And this is a printed book material, and it's called The Destiny of the American Negro. And it says it was reprinted from the Memphis Medical Monthly. So this is a medical journal, medical magazine of some kind, December 1905. And it is, the person speaking is H.L. Sutherland, MD. We have a doctor. And so when you click this, we're going to go through this. I'm not going to read every page to you. There's 12 pages, but I do want to go through it. And I just want to show you this. So basically, Sutherland is addressing a medical association in Memphis, Tennessee. He is, according to this, a white doctor, and he's advocating for the separation of the white and Black races for moral and medical reasons, regarding African Americans as an inferior race morally, intellectually, and medically. Oh, I have it opened up here. You can download it yourself. I'll leave the link. We're going to chat through this. But before we do that, I even want to just share that I'm a trained historian, but I also love family history and kind of creating context there. And in 1905, my mom's side of the family, her great-grandmother was 5 years old, born in Louisiana. And according to the census records at the time of her birth, she was labeled as mulatto, and her parents were both listed as Black. And what does Black mean? Well, it means everything and nothing. We've done deep dives on this channel, white and Black. These are ridiculous terms for people. You think Black, it's a monolithic thing, and it's not. She was multiracial. She had Choctaw heritage. She had West African heritage. She had French. She had Spanish.
And so just keep that in the back of your mind. Even if this is not something that directly connects to your family, just saying the American Negro, we're using the word Negro here, and then he's going to be talking about whites and blacks. These terms are not being elucidated, and I think that that is on purpose. So the destiny of the American Negro. The destiny of the American Negro is a question fraught with great interest to all citizens of the United States. His place among the races has not been definitely fixed. So keep that in mind. He's saying we don't know where the Negroes are going to land. While his advancement socially is a perpetual cause of hysteria to the northern philanthropists.
Do not get a consolidation loan until you see this. Did you know that on most credit card statements,
His physical preservation is exciting the gravest apprehension of those who, from daily observation of his environment, habits, and diseases, know him best. Let's pause there. Whoop. This opening. What this guy's basically saying is that the people in the North are a little crazy. They want equality, and they're hysteric. Actually, they're hysteric about it. But the people who know them best, who observe the blacks best in the South, feel differently. So he said, notwithstanding the assertion that, quote, all men are created equal, those who have been associated with the Negro for many years are slow to accept this fiat or to believe that he can ever be raised to our level, no matter how wide the door of opportunity may be open, but that race and heredity have been and are yet the determining factors in his struggle for a place among civilized people. After 40 years of freedom, keep in mind, like literally this is only like 40 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, right? With the paternalism of our government to uphold and sustain him against the dominancy of the superior race, his emancipators must confess to a measure of disappointment in his progress. So what he's saying here is that the government thinks that they're the daddy of the black race, and they're trying to help him not be crushed by the superior white race. And even his emancipators are upset by where the chips have fallen at this point. This is his claim. For the millions which have been spent on this education by state and by charitable individuals, there has been a fair return in a lessened degree of illiteracy. But paradoxical as it may seem, his moral and physical conditions have notably deteriorated. The Negro has neither moral conception nor religion, yet he is an emotional religionist of the loudest type and dies like a martyr. He is a fatalist without understanding it. He respects no law except through fear. He knows no country and possesses an inborn hatred for the white race, without whose care and control he would revert to barbarism in less than a score of years. Okay, we'll pause right here. So if you don't know me, well, I'm a Christian. That is the most important part of my identity. You know that.
So just like I say, man, it always been and it still is today in a sense almost, but I guess it ain't got better, but definitely back then during those times, definitely from 1492 up to this time, it being the enemy. You know what I'm saying? They've been looking, you know what I'm saying? But they've been the enemy to us, and we've been the enemy to them. You know what I'm saying? And just like I say, it always been, if they seen a black person, it don't matter where they at in the world when they find a nigga. It don't matter where these niggas at when they find a nigga. At that time, they was pushing a serious line of slavery and was looking at people like beasts, and they was supposed to, you know what I'm saying, they trying to get niggas souls, niggas pagans, niggas all this, the devil, and all this old goofy type shit. And it just showed me more that when it comes to us over here, that they can just say any label and it's supposed to stick, even if it was in the history. You know what I'm saying? So they'd be like, oh yeah, they Ethiopians, or they Zulu, or they Gullah. You know what I'm saying? It's just all these different types. It's just all these different, but but they try to make it a broad stroke for the people. You know what I'm saying? They try to make it a broad stroke for all the people. Like all the people got the same story, and all people ain't got the same story over here. And then on top of that, you seeing with these people, yeah, but they ain't even getting their shit right. So you think these niggas was telling us the truth back then? And that's why I be trying to point out that niggas was found over here, niggas been over here, and try to put more light to that, because I feel like that stuff been buried in the history, for real though. But make sure that you're pulled up and rolled up. You know, I'm glad that you showed up to comment, like, subscribe, tell a friend, and do it again.
That trumps everything for me. And people say, why do you care about, why are you so obsessed with race? I keep getting, why are you so obsessed with race? Why are you so obsessed? I'm not obsessed with it. I'm obsessed with moving on from this conversation. That's what I'm obsessed with. But if you've ever planted a seed before, you ever plant a seed and you water a seed and you tend a seed, what happens? It grows into a plant, right? And I feel like seeds have been planted a couple generations ago, and they were watered and they were tended. And now we're dealing with the fruit of that, where we have this division in our society, and people want to act like, why is that happening? Why can't we just move on? Well, you've got to understand it. What happened to make that tree grow, right? Why do we have this bitter fruit right now? Well, a seed was planted. We want to go back even as far as slavery, right? It's not the victim Olympics. I'm not claiming that, but also I wouldn't be here.
Worry about theft of your mail and packages? Wouldn't it be great if you could...
If a couple great-great-great-grandparents had not been taken across the Middle Passage as slaves and brought over to Louisiana and had kids, and I can follow that whole line directly to me sitting right here, looking like this. So, we have to put things in context. And I think that primary sources do help us to do that. But you can see here, I even say, he knows no country. Well, what happened, right? Let's keep going on. He has no cooperative faculty except in politics, being a born Republican. Isn't that interesting? And when he deserts his party, he is a marked man with his race and has become a renegade for personal gain. In his native state, he had neither religion nor tradition. That's a claim, right? Now his religion is purely imitative, and his only tradition is an exaggerated picture of hardships and cruelties imposed upon him while a slave. Now, that is just absolutely ridiculous, though, right? That's ridiculous. And yeah, there were nice slave owners. I will concede that. Now, it's like, how nice could you be if you own a human being, right? Like, okay, we can all start there, right? But it's a spectrum. It's a spectrum. And we also know that they were just absolutely barbaric, monstrous slave owners. This has an impact, right? This is planting seeds. Seeds have been planted. And now, they say, like, the birds have come home to roost. We have problems, but we need to look further back. Like, what is the first cause here? Physically, the Negro was at his highest day of development as a slave. Okay. From a dwarf, he was bred up to the full stature of manhood. He was well fed and clad in his labor in the fields of sunshine and fresh air, and good sanitary conditions of his quarters, with plenty of plain but wholesome food, tended to the growth and development and power to repel disease. This is probably one of the craziest things I've ever read. So basically, being enslaved on plantation was like a vacation. Sunshine, fresh air, nice conditions. Like, again, I'm not saying that every experience was the same, but like, let me know who would like to trade freedom for being owned by another human being, and you're just at their mercy, their mercy, their whims. I would rather be poor and free than be enslaved with sunshine and fresh air, which I can get anyway, thanks. As a result, chronic disease, especially syphilis and tuberculosis, both of the intrinsic origin, were extremely uncommon affections in the Negroes, and this didn't happen a lot. Their lives were ordered then exactly as we would order them now to combat the diseases. So basically, look how good they had it. It was so good for them they didn't have tuberculosis or syphilis. After the close of the Civil War, the picture completely changed. There was a steady movement of Negro populations to the cities and towns, which has increased with the years until they now equal or exceed the whites in the majority of our towns. By reason of their improvidence, they are crowded into insanitary abodes in the most undesirable parts of.
I find that some bullshit as far as on the population. because they try to paint it within history and try to say, well, shit, you know what I'm saying? The blacks, they overpopulated us. No, they always say that in the beginning of the history. It was a 5-1. But now niggas is building. But now niggas is getting their numbers up now. That's what I'm saying. They be playing with these numbers, man. And I'm gonna try to break that down for real though. That's definitely one of my assignments.
Towns and have not the sufficiency of wholesome food. Marriage is the exception, and their children are brought up in shame. From long observation, I think not more than 2% of Negro girls preserve their virginity to the age of 12. The race has entered upon a, quote, descending developmental progress, as Humphrey has expressed, to old age. Poverty, ignorance, immortality, and disease is the condition of the masses of the Negro of the South today. We're going to skip down a little bit. He talks a lot about that, and you can go in this, but he makes a really crazy prediction. I want to chat with you about that. So he basically says, they've got all these diseases now. And the prophecy of the extinction of the Negro race by Hoffman, made 9 years ago, seems more probable of fulfillment now than then, not only because of the high mortality rate, but also of the lessening fecundity. The small number of Negro children on plantations is a matter of common remark by men who farm with Negro labor.
Best believe it's still white people now that's trying to come up with a plan to wipe niggas out. Also, right now in 2025, just like the niggas was doing that shit. When was this? 1920 something. These niggas still plotting this scheme.
So basically, they're saying there's not as many kids. So Negroes are going to disappear. And he talks about population in the South, New Orleans, Charleston, Atlanta, Memphis, which is interesting because it's like, on some level, he's saying, well, there's too many blacks compared to whites. They're taking over our towns. He said that at the beginning. But then he's saying, actually, though, mortality is so high for blacks, they're going to disappear. And I'm kind of like, well, then don't worry about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, just don't worry about it. Like, if they're all going to go away, they're not having babies, then just don't worry about it, right? But he is worried.
Look, commercials been crazy.
He jumps down and says, it's a stupendous task to undertake to save a race of people from extinction whose characteristics are ignorance, immorality, superstition, and which regards our own efforts as inimical to its welfare. But we owe it to posterity, and we owe it to ourselves as Christian obligation, for, quote, he has been laid at our gate. So now he's going to start bringing in the scripture, and I want to address it. So he basically said there are a lot of Negroes, he's saying, who are infected and sick with diseases. And so he said, well, the radical treatment of the trouble would be the separation of races. But it's another question as to how this could be accomplished and where the Negro could be colonized so as to give him the best opportunity to enjoy life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. All right. So I'm going to link to a video. I'm not going to get into it here because I want to stay in this document. Abraham Lincoln, the night before the Emancipation Proclamation, had someone come to him with a plan. Because the concern, where do all these people go? What do we do? And they came up with a plan to offer these people who are about to be emancipated the opportunity to colonize some other areas. And the United States would provide shelter and opportunities for work, and they could build their life, and we could free people, but also not have them live in the United States.
We need that offer right now, the reparations. That's what the FBA is trying to get right now. As you see, they were trying to put a plan together to try to get something, I guess. That shit probably fucked up with, you know what I'm saying, whenever Abraham got killed. But we need that same offer. Give us a state, just like how these niggas giving Somalia a state Give us a couple of states, some counties and cities, and let us rock it out. Give us about goddamn 5 trillion, and let us twerk that. And I promise we gonna make it work. We gonna make it happen. Fuck with us, real. FBA all day.
As you might guess, everything went terribly wrong with this. There was like 400 people, I think, who did choose to take the path of leaving the U.S. and 400 previously.
But nah, we ain't leaving the U.S. Give us a state. Give us one of these countries. Matter of fact, give us Venezuela. These niggas don't want to act right. Give us the motherfucking countries down there. I love to go live in the goddamn tropics. Whole country to us. Give us the same way with them niggas gave but Chile or Peru a whole bunch of goddamn billions of dollars. Let us get that one of these states over here in America. Let us do us. And it's gonna pop.
And save people, and wanted to kind of colonize these other areas. And they were basically just left for dead. Like, we're not given all the stuff that they needed. I will leave a link to that video below if you want to see it. So it's interesting that he says that, because it's like, well, actually, they did try that and it was a colossal failure. And I have to just pause here. The Bible talks about like reaping what you sow. What you sow matters. You can't, like I said, plant the seed, water it, tend it, take care of it, coax it to grow, and then be upset with the fruit that comes from that plant, because you planted a bitter seed, you're going to get a bitter fruit. And slavery and this problem was just dropped upon us, and we didn't even want it. It just was laid on our doorstep. He uses the phrase laid at our gate, and he's referring to the Good Samaritan story there, and we may get back to that. That's not what happened. It's hard to compare these two things, because slavery was something that people chose over and over and over again here. And that's a difference worth pointing out.
Are you wearing 7 layers and still freezing your man nipples?
You need the new 340 GSM.
So he jumps down. He says also, there are other reasons why the separation of the races should be made, and perhaps paramount to the consideration of the extinction of the inferior race. One of them is the preservation of the higher ideals of the Anglo-Saxon race by discontinuing association in the same territory and under the same laws of the race whose traits and tendencies are all bad. I wonder what he would say about me. I grew up not knowing a lot about my mom's side of the family. Actually, nothing. Everything I knew was a lie. And, I identify as a New Yorker. I mean, I live in Nashville. I have for almost 20 years. I'm a Christian and I'm a New Yorker. Really, that's my identity. People are like, are you white? Are you black? How do you see yourself? It's like, it's on some level, it's all nonsense, right? These colors are all nonsense. But the idea that he's painting with such a broad brush of like, you're Anglo-Saxon or you're part of a race whose traits and tendencies are all bad. It's like, to what point? Like, what's the ratio you have to be? Is it a zero sum? You're all Anglo-Saxon, or not enough? Is half? I mean, I'm no Anglo-Saxon. So I'm just asking for a friend, right? So he's saying, I think it is impossible for two peoples with such marked racial differences to dwell in one country and be governed by the same laws. Then you shouldn't have brought these people over. And, I homeschool my kids now. I used to be a teacher. But I talked with the kids about this a lot at the beginning of the school year. We were studying what the founding fathers did, because it was very interesting to see that the debate about slavery was happening even when we were breaking away from Great Britain during the Revolutionary War, and writing out the Declaration of Independence, getting rid of the Articles of Confederation, and writing the U.S. Constitution that kind of outlines our laws, because a lot of the founding fathers, they owned slaves, but they also believed slavery was wrong, but they also believed that you couldn't just get rid of it in one fell swoop. And there was there were issues with writing the new laws where delegates did not agree about slavery. And some were just like, we need to get rid of slavery right now, or I'm not signing the new Constitution. But they ended up having, there was enough people that compromised on that to say, okay, well, we want to get rid of it, but we're not going to make that a requirement to start this country. These people were brought over, in the state that they're in, the poverty they're in, the lack of education they're in. How could you say that it's their fault? Again, we're talking 1905, right? So association with an inferior race, whom we remember as our slaves, whose personal political rights we do not respect, has had a brutalizing effect on us and has led to much bloodshed, which was not justified by the offenses committed. We know there is scarcely a place in the South today where a respectable white man can be convicted of murder or even sentenced to prison for a short-term killing of a Negro under any circumstances. This is one of our unwritten laws, inspired by our contact with the Negro. Okay, let's sit with this for a sec. Okay, so I don't even think you need me to comment on that. The contact with them. Where do you think they're going to go? You think they're just going to dissipate into the air after emancipation? He's going to go on. He's going to give another reason why the races need to be separated. He said there's illicit relations too frequently existing between white males and Negro females. The Negro woman, both in her own estimation and that of her race, is elevated when she's with a white man. It's basically saying. I have to be careful what I say on here because YouTube flags me nonstop. And it's the zenith of her expectations in life, and many otherwise estimable and well-bred white men become bound as in a shirt of Nessus by these sirens whose song is always ruin and death to character, and their ideals lowered, as evidence that I have not exaggerated the immoral tendency from dwelling together of these two races. He's like, when they get married, we have to but note the increasing number of mulattoes in our country. Statistics show that the mulatto, whatever shade in color, is morally and physically the inferior of the pure black, that he is a and just like, I skimmed this, but I didn't read this part yet. He is a more dangerous criminal, is comparatively worthless as a laborer, and more subject, to tuberculosis. He's like, and also don't forget the tuberculosis. He said, there's another danger, and the very thought thrills us with horror. I believe that our association with the Negro has dragged us down more than it has uplifted him. Okay, I don't know. Maybe you brought them over. Like, again, like I just keep coming back to this. The accountability is so lacking here. I mean, there has been no point in this document, in this speech, where he's like, maybe.
The same way that you question in their history, we question in that history too, miss. About all black people being brought over here to America. There was a lot of black people found in America. And we point that out in the book of the SGI Talks.
We shouldn't have done that. He's more like, maybe we shouldn't have freed them, to be honest. He's not even like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have had slaves. He's like, maybe we shouldn't have freed them. All right, so he says now, I believe that we of the South are now confronted with the most serious problem, which we have had since the Reconstruction period. So that's the period following the emancipation. If slavery was a sin, 40 years of freedmen is an all-sufficient atonement. According to who? According to what? Like what? What? I mean, think about what 40 years is. If I lived my whole life as an enslaved person and I was freed at 40 years old. Okay, so now I have to figure out like how to exist in this new economy, how to exist in a world where, people don't want you there and they hate you. I mean, it's quite clear. And he's like, and we never forget that they were our slaves. And it's like, okay, so now from age 40 to 80, I need to figure out how to scratch out an existence. And freedom is the atonement. Remember at the beginning, we talked about how, he's referencing the founding fathers. Now here it's actually, we're doing you a favor that makes up for it. Like, sorry, right? No doubt the transition period and a change of labor from Negro to white would be a trying one and bring financial disaster to many, but for the incalculable good it would bring to our sons and their sons forever to be separated from this inferior and corrupt race, that they maintain a high standard of honor, that they may not imbrue their hands in his blood, that they may not draw the bar sinister. Okay, I have to pause here. So basically he's like, well, we actually had to end slavery because like we were just in too close of contact with you guys.
I'm done spending an obscene amount of money on takeout every week. Done.
I'm getting back on track with Factor. Fresh, never.
They have a new self, and for this, they should ever pray, quote, who shall deliver us from this body of death? Okay, I do have some notes for you. I want to jump over to those. What's nuts? Okay, I want to grab some notes for you. Let's talk about this. So, I don't want to talk about politics because I don't really believe that. We get cozy here. I don't really believe either political party is for you or for me. I really don't. I think we can pretty much all agree on that. And it's not even about, so it's not about modern politics, right? I think this is more about one, understanding mechanism. How does ideology actually work? Not just like in theory, but I mean like in practice, in real life. We have a smart person, a respected person, possibly using facts, but there's a predetermined conclusion. Like they are going to, this guy's like, I'm getting to this conclusion no matter what. And this document is a masterclass in that, really. Like it really is. Like if we can separate our emotion from this, which we should. I mean, the emotion is important, our emotional reaction, but like this is a masterclass document, honestly. Reading this document teaches us something about history, about people. We all know people like this. Like, when you have an argument with someone, or maybe, yourself, I've been there where it's like, I'll hear you out, but I know what my conclusion is. I know where I stand, and you're not going to convince me otherwise. And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not good, right? This document is that. When someone is using facts, but keeps reaching the same conclusion no matter what the facts are, like that is a sign of, like, that's a red flag, right? When someone takes scripture and reframes it to support what they already believe, instead of letting the Holy Spirit convict them or work on them towards God's heart, that's a spiritual problem too. This teaches me that ideology can wrap itself up in faith language. I can quote scripture to sound righteous, but the fruit reveals the tree. My pastor just did a sermon on this last week, and it was really interesting. He had a bunch of pictures of trees without their fruit. She's like, guess what this is? And like, you really had no idea what was going on. The picture, I don't know what that is. But as soon as you get the picture of the tree with the apples on it, the oranges, the lemon, you're like, oh, an apple tree. It's a fruit tree. It's an orange tree. This is what Jesus said. You know a tree by its fruit. It's fruit. And that is like, whether you're a Christian or not, like that is such an important life lesson, right? We know that is true inherently. This is not like a history lesson in abstraction, right? This is a real document. This is a real person. These are real claims. These are real thoughts. These are real predictions. When we're reading primary sources, when you're researching your family, maybe reading those kind of documents, we think carefully about what we believe and why. This is something important. We're going to find out the authority figures, the facts, the public official facts, the official voice, they got it wrong. They're just plain wrong. I'm going to leave a link to this below and some links to other videos. And thank you so much for being here with me. I just appreciate you. I love being able to have these conversations for as long as we're...
Yeah, man, it being no love, and it being no type of respect, and it being just a one label and one stroke just for any black person within the world. Just like I said, it don't matter where they found the set. We all get the same, or we all got the same label and treatment. We got a little bit more right here. Hold on. Make sure you pulled up and rolled up.
God cursed all black people. So here's what people claimed that this meant. They claim that God cursed all black people and God wants them to be slaves forever. The curse of Ham.
See, and that's that, see? And with this religion thing, see, and when this how they take us from the land through religion and say that the black man is a beast, the black man was a beast, the black man don't have anything, he don't have any rights. We got to be his master. He's the devil, all that old crazy type thinking back then. That's what I'm saying. That goes from Shimon, I guess whenever they got out the Grenada Wars, it started in the Iberian Peninsula, where they say if you look like black, like if you look like these black people, you automatically a slave. And they went into the new worlds with that same mindset. That's why we got different African terms all around the world. But they took away, but they scrubbed away the African terms over here within America where they found the black people and just intertraded them between the Americas. But let's check out and see how these niggas sick in the head with this religion shit.
The idea that God ordained racial separation this way, some people are meant to be subordinate to others based on their skin color. So let that sink in. The president of the Southern Baptist Convention was saying on record that as long as the Bible existed, slavery should exist. And the biblical authority itself guaranteed the permanence of slavery. But it gets worse. And for 400 years, Christian leaders have used it to justify slavery, to divide families, and I think I would argue make people hide who they actually are. The strange part is it's actually all made up. So this is a story about how one of the biggest lies was built on a biblical passage that means something completely different. It's called the Curse of Ham. Hi, I'm Danielle Romero. Thank you so much for being with me here on my channel, where we talk about American identity and family stories and hidden history. And if you would like to connect with me off of YouTube and join me over at Patreon for behind the scenes content and just being able to chat and connect, come on over at patreon.com/NYTN, or you can send me a coffee at coffee.com/NYTN13. So let's start with what the Bible actually says. Genesis 9 is right after the flood. I'm going to tell you the story, then we'll read it together. Noah plants a vineyard, but he makes wine. He drinks too much. He passes out naked in his tent. His son Ham walks in and sees him passed out. So Ham leaves, tells his two other brothers. His two other brothers are Shem and Japheth, and they grab a blanket and they walk backwards so they don't see their dad naked and passed out, and they cover him up. Okay, well then Noah wakes up and he basically says, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves he will be to his brothers." So I want to read the actual passage with you and we'll chat about it. I'm going to read from Genesis 9. The sons of Noah who went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these people the whole earth were dispersed. Noah began to be a man of the soil, and he planted the vineyard. He drank of the wine and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it on both their shoulders and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backward, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, quote, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants he shall ever be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." And that's basically it. So we don't know what he's saying. He knew what his youngest son had done to him. You can read into it, you can make a guess, but we don't know. Doesn't say, it's not there, you're just guessing. So here's what people claimed that this meant. They claim that God cursed all black people and God wants them to be slaves forever. But if you read it again, it says, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves he will be to his brothers." So it doesn't mention race or skin color, black people. It's literally Noah's grandson. And people twisted this somehow into justifying the slave trade. I want to introduce you to a girl that I'm going to call Sarah. That's not her real name, but the story is real. Sarah grew up in Mississippi. She went to a Baptist church, lived in a white neighborhood, white family. She could go back 6 generations according to their family records. And according to everything that she was told, she was white. She was Anglo-Saxon. And she believed the theology that she had been taught, that we're all descended from Adam and Eve, and then Noah, and then Noah's 3 sons, right? Ham, Shem, and Japheth. The whole human race comes from these brothers, right? So we're all related, we're all family. So that's the official story, and she felt good about that.
The sights, the sounds, the styles.
But Sarah also grew up in a town where there was a different reality. So there were black churches, white churches, black neighborhoods, white neighborhoods. Black and white people didn't really mix. And when she asked why, the answers were really vague. That's just how it is. I've been told, like birds of a feather flock together. People are more comfortable with their own kind. And occasionally, if she pressed hard enough, she would hear something else whispered. Well, you know, because they're Ham's descendants. Now, that sentence was never really finished for her, according to her, but Sarah understood what it meant. She understood the implication of that. She understood that somewhere, somehow, in the logic of church and community, the Bible had been used to explain why her town was divided, why churches were separate, why race mattered. So at 30 years old, Sarah did what millions of us have done, especially as Americans over the last 15 years. She took a DNA test, did 23andMe just for fun, and the results came back a few weeks later. What do you think? 12% West African ancestry. So Sarah's staring now at her computer screen because 12% is not a trace amount. That's not even something that you can really ignore. It's not noise. That's, we would say, genealogically significant. Her parents thought something must be wrong, so she called her grandmother. So she calls her grandmother and Sarah's like, Graham, I just took a DNA test and it's saying that, I have 12% West African, which means you have a lot more. Her grandmother went quiet for a long time on the phone. She said, I don't want to talk about that. Now, to understand in part why Sarah's family had to hide this, we need to go back to the 17th century because there was a moment where Christian leaders in America made a choice about how to read the Bible. They were facing a problem. Their economy was dependent on slavery, not even indentured servitude, but permanent slavery. And slavery required a justification that was more powerful than just simple economics. So we're gonna get into this. Here's how the lie worked. So the twist was simple, but it was brilliant, if I might say so. It was completely dishonest. So first they shifted the curse from Canaan to all of Ham's descendants, who are listed in the next chapter, Genesis 10. And it tells us that his descendants were Cush, who went to Ethiopia, Mizraim, Egypt, Put, Libya, Canaan, the Middle East. There's no sub-Saharan African country here, which is where the slave trade really took place. Second, they collapsed all the geography into a race. So they basically were like, Africa equals cursed, and that equals Black people, and that equals slavery. But it doesn't follow logically, but it didn't matter. Third, they ignored that the name Ham doesn't actually mean dark or black. I've seen people mention that. Scholars had to debunk that and said it's just a name. It doesn't mean that anywhere. Fourth, and more importantly, they had other Christian leaders telling them, no, you guys are wrong. They didn't listen. In 1673, Richard Baxter read the curse of Ham argument and he rejected it completely. He looked at slavery and he was furious. This is what he said. How cursed a crime is it to equal men to beasts? Is it not your practice? Do you not buy them and use them merely to the same end as you do your horses? He said this in 1673. And he didn't just stop there. He called them devils for it. He said they were worse than devils. He said, quote, they that buy them and use them as beasts for their mere commodity are fitter to be called incarnate devils than Christians. Cotton Mather, a famous pastor from Boston, went after people just a couple decades after this because people were saying, well, Black people don't have souls. Well, this is what he said. He said, quote, it has been cavilled by some that it is questionable whether the Negroes have rational souls or no. But let that British insinuation never be whispered anymore. He's like, that's insane. Don't say that. He also called up people who were using skin color as an excuse to say slavery is okay. He said, quote, as if the great God went by the complexion of men and in his favors to them, as if none but whites might hope to be favored and accepted with God. Cotton Mather, 1706. And he told Christians claiming to be faithful, they act like they're Christians while they're enslaving people. He's like, you're a hypocrite. He said, if thou wilt name the name of Christ, in denominating themselves a Christian, then depart from this iniquity. It's like, you cannot be a Christian and own people. That's crazy. 1706, okay? So the curse argument's wrong. Slavery's wrong. But the Southern Baptist Convention, which was founded in 1845 specifically to protect slavery, ignored them. So the pastors preached this lie anyway. The seminaries taught it. The Sunday schools taught it. Other Christian authorities telling them, you guys are wrong. And they chose a different path. This argument is that God ordained slavery. The Bible proves it in this section of Genesis. And this is just a settled matter of theology. So Patrick Mell, who became the fourth president of the Southern Baptist Convention itself, said this. He said, from Ham were descended the nations that occupied the land of Canaan and those that now constitute the African or Negro race. Their inheritance, according to prophecy, has been and will continue to be slavery. So long as we have the Bible, we expect to maintain it. So let that sink in. The president of the Southern Baptist Convention was saying on record that as long as the Bible existed, slavery should exist. And the biblical authority itself guaranteed the permanence of slavery. But it gets worse. Robert Dabney, who was one of the most influential theologians of the 19th century South, he had a full philosophical framework he set up around this. So he had something called In Defense of Virginia, and he published in 1867, so 2 years after it had been abolished. He writes this, quote, it gives us the origin of domestic slavery, and we find that it was appointed by God as the punishment of and remedy for the peculiar moral degradation of a part of the race. And so he's saying it's a remedy for moral degradation. In other words, slavery was beneficial to enslaved people. It was a form of discipline, correction, and training, and God had given African people into slavery for their own good. So this is an incidental theology, and it clearly is not just one pastor's private opinion.
This was the official doctrine of the largest Baptist denomination in America, articulated by its leaders, taught in its seminaries, preached from its pulpits, and it included, Sunday school materials, So here's what's important now. This theology worked because it was persuasive. It's powerful. It convinced millions of Christians. White Christians, that they could own human beings, and they could separate families, they could whip them, they could mistreat them, and they could all do this in God's name. So there's more. So the Bible, the actual Bible, not that distorted version that these people were teaching from, contains something that actually contradicts all of this. So it's in Acts chapter 2, and this is the day of Pentecost. The Holy Spirit comes down after Jesus has been resurrected and goes back to heaven. And the apostles start speaking in languages they don't know. And the text says that people from, quote, every nation under heaven heard the gospel in their own language. People from Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Asia, Egypt, Libya. There's like 12 different groups mentioned. So think about what this is. At the Tower of Babel, God had confused human language, scattered people across the earth. Centuries later now, God, though, is doing the opposite. He's bringing people together. He's uniting what had been divided. God's saying, through the gift of shared faith, you are one people again. And Paul, the Apostle Paul, writes this in the letter to the Galatians. He said, Galatians 3:28, there is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. So that means that divisions that separate people, it's not saying that like Jews don't exist or like males don't exist. But what he's saying is that the things that separate us, whether it's based on ethnicity, gender, social status, these divisions are overcome when we're in unity as Christians. These aren't eternal divisions. So this is the arc of the New Testament. It's moving towards unity, not separation. It's moving toward the erasure of barriers that we have set up as groups of people, not the preservation of those groups. But the Southern Baptist leaders ignored these passages. I don't know what they did with these passages, reinterpreted them beyond recognition. But I think they clung to this idea of the curse of Ham because it's useful, right? It justified slavery. It justified segregation. It justified the separation of churches, of neighborhoods, of families. And for 400 years, this worked. But this is what is astonishing, if you're not already astonished. This theology didn't die with slavery, actually. It didn't fade away after the Civil War or after Reconstruction. It persisted. So it just kind of shifted targets. So now, instead of being used to defend slavery, which has been abolished, it defended segregation. You see how there's like these moving goalposts here. So in 1960, Bob Jones University, which is a major evangelical institution with deep Baptist roots, passed a resolution. Okay, here's what it said. It's like, quote, God has separated people for his own purpose. He has erected barriers between the nations, not only land and sea barriers, but also ethnic, cultural, and language barriers. God has made people different from one another and intends those differences to remain. And so Bob Jones didn't drop its ban on interracial dating until the year 2000. 2000. And they used the same bad theological justification, this curse of Ham, the Tower of Babel. They said God separated people racially, wanted them to stay apart. And I think what has been deliberately ignored is that God at Pentecost undid all of that. He sent Jesus to undo a separation. He sent the Holy Spirit to bring people back together. And I'm not really quite sure how that has been missed here. So in 2003, scientists completed the Human Genome Project. They mapped all of human DNA, all 3 billion base pairs of it. And what they discovered was that race, at least as we understand it here in America, as Southern Baptists had theologized it, doesn't exist in our DNA. Now, and be clear, obviously people look different. People have different cultures. We have different ethnic groups, right? No one's denying that. So here's what science tells us. Humans spread out from a common origin point, right? Like the Bible says, they moved into different climates, appearance adapted. You have darker skin near the equator for more UV protection. You have lighter skin up when you're farther up north so that you can get vitamin D easier. There's this adaptation, this evolution towards survival, but underneath we're all the same. And literally that lines up with what actually the Bible's been saying this whole time. We're all made in the image of God. We're all descended from the same family. No need to complicate it. So let's go back to Sarah.
Sarah's story, to all the thousands of Sarahs that are out there who took a DNA test and discovered that the racial categories that their families and maybe even their churches had insisted were absolute, that were divinely ordained and were sacred. Actually, these were false categories. Sarah had 12% West African ancestry. Other people found more. And the revelation forced the question that American Christianity, I think, has been avoiding for 400 years. It's like doing archaeology, like in real time, in living memory. And I have walked that path too. I'm still on that path. What's devastating is I think some families made that choice because they believed what Southern Baptist theology had told them. They believed that maybe having Black ancestry was disqualifying in some way or would destroy their social position. You'd be unwelcome in the church. They believed a lie. Now, to be fair, the Southern Baptist Convention has in recent years issued formal apologies for the historical defense of slavery and segregation. So in 1995, when I was 9 years old, the denomination apologized for slavery. And in 2023, they issued a more specific apology. So this is 2025 when I'm filming. So 2 years ago, for what they called their, quote, complicity in racial inequity.
You're not a child, you're a man. So stop wearing so many layers to go outside and get the bearskin.
But I don't think an apology is the same as a reckoning. Because the reckoning, I think, would acknowledge that slavery wasn't just wrong, but that the Bible was deliberately distorted to justify it. And how biblical authority was weaponized, how denominational leaders, seminary professors took scripture and twisted it beyond all recognition to serve a particular economic and social system. And it convinced millions of people. And I think even though Bob Jones dropped their ban on interracial dating in 2000, I think the underlying theology that produced that has not totally disappeared from American Christianity. That's how a lie becomes theology. That's how theology becomes the law, and how people end up doing horrible things, all in the name of God, right? And this is actually true of a lot of Bible stories. If you have ever read a children's book about David and Goliath, this is like the most well-known story, I feel like, ever. There's a part where David goes to King Saul. He's like, I'm going to kill Goliath for you. And he's like, wow, great, thank you. You can wear my armor if you'd like when you go out to meet him. And so David tries it on and he's like, actually, I don't ever wear this. I've never tried this in battle before, so I'm just going to not wear him. But in all the children's books and stuff, they say that David tried it on and he was too small for it and it didn't fit. And it's like, the Bible doesn't say that. You know what I mean? We got to read documents for ourselves. And that's true in this case, too. The genetic evidence is clear. We're all one family. The biblical evidence is clear. God's arc bends towards unity, not separation. So what are we going to do with that knowledge? The curse of Ham was never about what God wanted. It was about what humans wanted to justify. And I also want to encourage you to not let this push you away from the Bible, because people are so broken, right? And we're not good ambassadors usually for what we want to represent. But that doesn't take away from the power of God's word and his desire for unity for us. And that's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful arc. And if you are open to it, Jesus said, if you seek and knock, the door will be opened. And so I would just encourage you to kind of dive into that for yourself. Don't take my word. Otherwise, thank you so much for being with me. We'll talk soon.
So, one thing she didn't bring up was whenever they did come over here, when they got that ideology about Black people, this is the new world. This is considered to them the new world. They thought they knew the whole world, and they thought they knew everybody within the whole world because they talking about the timeline and everybody is coming from one place and all that old type of stuff like that. So when they find a new world and they finding Black people within the new world, they can't fathom to say, how did this particular person, we know that he a beast, and you know what I'm saying, they get, oh, he the devil and all this old type of thinking, and automatically saying, oh, he a runaway slave, that old crazy shit. When white people come into a new world, they never been on the land a day in their life, finding Black people and automatically putting African terms on them and saying, oh yeah, they runaways. Because of this ideology right here. This church shit right here. And there's no way we can have land rights. There's no way. You just seen what that the niggas just apologized with 2020 something. The church. And it's like I say, I'm gonna keep on showing the blacks found in America. And this shit kind of, hold on, man, it kind of got away from me. So I'm gonna play this last little video about how the Africans are saying that the FBA is the slaves. Look at this one little video, then we're gonna get up out of here for the day. I see the homie Truth Zone is going live. I'm gonna pop up over there a little bit later, but I'm gonna go and play this last little video, and we're gonna double back on NYTN. Shout out to NYTN for these videos and going in and doing her genealogy and, you know, coming back with this American history, you know what I'm saying, that we can look at and dissect and put on the table and weigh it up for the people. Hold on, let's go and get to this. Make sure you're powered up and rolled up.
I have no idea who came up with the idea to get me this, but it's genius. It's 2025, brother, because you got to divide me to conquer me.
And that human is me. Okay, so make sure you go and check that out. I do like Afro Wire. I'm not gonna lie, I like it because it's just certain things that I can do there that maybe I can't get people to do. So I like that. So make sure to check it out. All right. So let's get to the first video. Let's get to the first video, and let's have a real conversation about what this particular gentleman has to say, because it needs to be discussed.
I'm African American. He is straight African. How do you see African Americans?
I see y'all as slaves.
And what makes us slaves?
Because you built a nation that controls you.
How does it control us? We got NBA, NFL, we running it.
They use you as dancers and entertainers.
But they paying us $100 million plus.
Yeah, but then they own the money.
So do Africans, how y'all see African Americans?
Huh?
How do Africans see African Americans?
We see y'all honestly as, if you want the truth, we see y'all as our heroes that have given up on themselves.
But I know a lot of Americans that see y'all, they be like African booty scratchers.
It's the persona that the white man has printed on you to dismiss your brother. Because you got to divide me to conquer me with you.
But you divided us and said we are slaves.
Yeah.
But they got y'all too, ain't it?
No, they don't.
You went back, I'm your brother, I'm lost though.
Because I could say tomorrow, if I'm done with this shit, I could go home. You can't go home. You stay here.
All right. So, you know, like always, I like to play the video first, let y'all hear it in full context, and then we'll start it again, and then we'll just stop at certain points. Now, this guy, of course, you know, he really, okay, let's start it again.
I'm African American. He is straight African. How do you see African Americans?
I see y'all as slaves.
And what makes us slaves?
Because you built a nation that controls you.
How does it control us? We got NBA, NFL, we running it.
They use you as dancers and entertainers.
But they...
All right. First, let's start off first of all. First. This is what we be talking about. You say, and clearly he's West African. Clearly, okay? Clearly. You're West African, and you literally wearing the clothing and the style that we wear as Black Americans. So you literally want to dress like a slave. Why do you want to dress like a slave? You remember, you got your homeland. You know where you're from, right? You know where you're from. And yet you still want to come here and dress just like the slaves. What does that say about you? I mean, have you noticed that? Yeah, you'll come here to America. You literally cosplay a Black woman, a Black man. You have your cultural clothing. I never see y'all in your cultural clothing. I never see it. And all of them have their own cultural clothing. Okay. They have their cultural clothing, cultural food, languages, and I don't see them in it. Like they trying to blend in with us. And yet at the same time, of course, those who talking like this, okay? Not everybody talks this way. I'm talking about him or those with that same mindset, okay? So he says that we, if I'm not mistaken, let me rewind it because I don't want to put no words in the man's mouth. I don't like to do that with nobody. Let me rewind.
And it's 100 million plus.
Yeah, but then they own. I see y'all as slaves.
And what makes us slaves?
Because you built a nation that controls you.
Switch to TurboTax and file your own taxes free in the app if you didn't file with us last year.
All right. So he says that he sees us as slaves because we built a nation that controls us. Now that can be taken multiple ways, but let's take it all the way there. That's what we're here to do, is to take it multiple ways. We built a nation. We built a nation that controls us. Now that could be taken, well, we built America, but we don't control anything in America, but we built it. Does that make us slaves? No, we're not slaves as currently, but that was our position in America. Here's the thing with that. Yes, the folks, we got to be honest, they do control America. They do. Yes, they do. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and all of that. And to get us in that position, they constantly have done, military operations. They have sabotaged our movement, sabotaged our economics. It's been a lot of sabotage to Black Americans. We didn't get in that position by just because we just were weak and cowards. You understand what I'm saying? See, sir, people like yourself, and see, I'm more harder on people like you. I'm not hard on African women. And I thought about this hard today about African women. African women are put in a horrible position because men like him, they run, they flee the homeland. They don't want to stay and fight. They don't want to stay like Black American men stood and fought in America and made a better place for ourselves as Black men, for Black women and Black children. No, is it perfect? No, but we are not being treated like we once were in this country. We have made laws get changed. The police wearing body cams because of us as standard operating procedure. We're not sitting up here getting our churches bombed every weekend. We're not sitting up here having Black people finding them on trees and all. We're not having that no more. You ain't got the Klan running around here doing what they used to do. You know what I'm saying? Who stopped all that? Them folks didn't stop it because they just were so benevolent. They thought it was wrong. No, we made them stop it. We the one made them have fair housing. You know how the Fair Housing Act get in? When they took the life of Dr. King, there was Holy Week. Black people tore this country up for a good week. And then white people say, oh, hell, man, give them everything. Because they thought this country was going to fall. Because listen, when you put any group of people in a position that they don't want for anything and they don't even care about their life because you put them in a position they have nothing to lose, that is the most dangerous people to be around. Because they don't care what they do to you or anybody else. And Black America was in a position at that point where they say, man, the hell with it. Y'all taking our life anyway. I can't get a decent job. I can't get a decent place to stay. So, hey, man, I might well turn up. I'm not going out like a punk with it. If I take you with me, I'll take you with me. It is what it is. And that's the reason why certain things aren't happening anymore, because Black men stood and fight. They didn't run to Mexico. They didn't run to Canada. They didn't run to all these different countries. Unlike you, sir, you ran. Or your parents. I can't blame your mama, but your daddy ran. If anything, you're supposed to send your women out to another African country. You're supposed to come over here. And then you're supposed to stand and fight and make sacrifices in your homeland. So if you're a man here talking about Black American men, you are in no position to do that because you fled. Black American men did not flee. They stood, they fought. So you can call us slaves because true, that's our history. That is our history. But reality speaking, America has everybody enslaved now. If you want me to be honest with you, white people are enslaved financially. When you are in deep debt, you are enslaved. The Bible teaches that the debtor is enslaved to the lender. Look at all this affordability crisis. And the only reason it's a crisis is because white people can't afford stuff anymore. right? Student loan debt wasn't a problem until white people had a problem with it. Debt is king in America. The 13th Amendment still make you a slave if you go to prison. This country loves slavery. They just now figure out a way to get everybody in some form of slavery. Even for you to flee over here, they had a hand in that too. But the men of your nation were so corrupt. They were so corrupt that they did not stand and fight. Some of them took the money from the white man and sold people like you out while they were riding around in Toyota Land Cruisers, and they riding around in Mercedes, and all the politicians up here tricking off y'all money to slave queens, because that's what they do too. Them politicians over there are tricking off with the slave queen. Some 80-year-old politician going to trick off to some 22, 23-year-old slave queen over there in Lagos somewhere or anywhere they at, tricking off y'all money. They living good while y'all sitting up here got load shedding going on, water shedding. If you don't know what water shedding is, they cut their water off for so many hours and they cut their water back on. Some of you don't have proper piping, and y'all have the money, but your politicians tricking it off. And instead of you standing and fighting in your homeland and say, wait a minute, I shouldn't have to go to America or Europe or South Africa or anywhere. I should have it in my homeland. You don't stand and fight, you flee. And then you got the nerve to come here to America and talk down on Black Americans who have not fled anywhere. Sir, you can't do that.
And we're sure this is shocking for many of you that are just hearing the news and
that is a fact. You have not stood and fought. Some of y'all even upset with Ibrahim Traoré because he's standing and fighting in his homeland. He didn't flee Burkina Faso. He's trying to stand there and fight and make Burkina Faso a great nation. And if you was a real man, you'd go over there with him and stand with that brother and say, hey man, I'm gonna protect this brother. This brother right. I want Africa to be self-sufficient. He kicked the white French man out. He said, no, you're not taking our resources no more. No, that's a real man. See, that kind of African man right there, that's the brothers I like. Right there. He's standing and fighting his homeland. He's not running over here. He's not doing any of that. He's using his resources. But some of y'all over there, y'all don't like Traoré. Y'all don't like it. Because he's not sitting up here bootlicking to the white man, and he's not trying to flee everywhere. You cannot talk as a man. You cannot talk about no other man when you fled as a man. I don't blame women. I don't blame children. But when it comes to the men, you the one I look at. You have no right to talk. And I'm talking about to those who are doing it. Some of you like to come over here. You know what? I'm gonna get to that talking point. Let me wait. Let's go back to this gentleman.
How does it control us? We got NBA, NFL. We running it.
They use you as dancers and entertainers.
Okay, you're right. Some of us are dancers or entertainers, and yet our dancers or entertainers are making a lot more money than the GDP of some of your homeland. So if all I gotta do is dance and I get paid millions of dollars and I can have a life I never had, then dance it up, buddy. If you're an entertainer and you can get a life for your family that you never got before, hey, why not? Why not? What's wrong with that? We got NFL people who making millions, NBA. We got people online, all kind of people making money. There's nothing wrong with that. We have opportunity, sir, that you fled from your country to get. Once again, you could have had those same opportunities in your homeland, but you left. And the men that's there, they're the men that's trying to do something in the homeland. Because not everybody flee. Not everybody flee, and I know that. There's a lot of men right now that's trying to do something in your homeland, but you're over here. You should be going back to your homeland and help the men of your homeland. You should go and fight. Because if I had anything to do with it, I'd be wanting a meeting with all y'all and say, why are y'all here? I said, because you need to go back to your homeland. And listen, if I was president, I said, look, as the U.S. government, what do we need to do to help you? Because you need to go to your homeland and build it up. You can't just be over here. It's a brain drain. I said, look, the women and children can stay, but the men, you got to go back and you got to stand and fight. And then build it up for the people. And then when they get built up right, then if the women and children want to go back, that's fine. But the men need to go build it up over there. You're not building nothing up over here. You're not building a thing for your people back in the continent of Africa. But let's continue, because I can't stand that. You're not building nothing for the women and children.
But they paying us $100 million plus.
Yeah, but then they own the money.
So
that's so dumb. They own the money. Yeah, and they pay them a lot of money. That's so stupid. Okay.
So the Africans, how y'all see African Americans?
Huh?
How do Africans see African Americans?
We see y'all honestly as, if you want the truth, we see y'all as our heroes that have given up on themselves.
Okay, that don't even make sense. You see us as your heroes that have given up. What have we given up? You didn't really define and say, if you told me that, I'll say, what have we given up? I just want to know, because maybe you're pointing something out to me that maybe we need to look at. What have we gave up on? If anything, sir, you given up. You left your homeland. You gave up on it. You know, some of the most horrible commentary I ever heard about the African continent has been from other Africans that's here. Some, like, I remember a long time ago when I never been myself. And I've talked to Nigerians, I've talked to Ghanaians on jobs, and I asked them about, I say, hey man, how is it in Ghana? How is it in Nigeria? Oh man, it's a horrible place. It's just, it's dirty, it's corrupt, and it's just so horrible. I mean, I never even heard white folks talk like that about the African continent, how they talked about it. That I never heard nothing good about it from men I've worked with on the jobs in the petrochemical industry. They're over here. So not only did you flee your homeland, you saw some horrible things about it. Now you got some that will say, oh, it's the best place ever. Then you're like, okay, well, why are you here? Well, it's no opportunity for me. Well, you don't have opportunity because you left. The only way you will get opportunity, you have to build. Look, you see the opportunity you got right now? You can't say white people gave you opportunity, because if you left it up to white people, you would have no opportunity still today. Black Americans fought for every opportunity that any of you have to come here and build anything. It was Black Americans. And no, we should never let you forget that. Listen, one thing I want y'all to say, to know, I'm always going to put all the emphasis on the men. I'm not going to look at no woman. I'm not going to look at no small children. I'm going to look at the men. You're fleeing. You're not building anything. Then you got the nerve to come over here and talk about us. But let's continue.
But I know a lot of Americans that see y'all, they be like African booty scratchers.
It's the persona that the white man has printed on you to dismiss your brother, because you got to divide me to conquer me with you.
But you divided us and said we are slaves.
Yeah.
But they got y'all too, ain't it?
No, they don't.
You went there, I'm your brother, I'm lost though.
Because I could say tomorrow, if I'm done with this shit, I could go home. You can't go home. You stay here.
So, and you have to understand the fleeing mentality, what he just said. So if it gets tough over here in America, he said, I'm going to get back on a plane and go back and just abandon everything here. Because listen, if you flee your homeland, you will flee anywhere. So you can never expect him to stand and fight for anything. Bottom line, you can't expect it. Now, let me tell you about this lazy comment. And you know, I'm gonna keep circling back to that lazy comment. You tell some and the offense. Let me tell you the offense I can make it plain for everybody. Let me tell you what the offense is. We know that come from a white supremacist talking point, okay? Because a lazy person don't even affect you. But if you come up to a Black American, and only if you're doing it or saying it online, well, no matter Candace Owens, you know, she was talking all that stuff about Black people being a Caribbean, right? You know, her too, or many others. Who is it? The Myron Gaines, he another one that talk all this crap about Black people. People like Myron Gaines, he's over here talking about Black Americans lazy. That listen, there's no more people more lazy than a Myron Gaines. Let me tell you why. You were so lazy. The folks are so lazy. They didn't want to build up the homeland. They didn't want to fight. They didn't want to make it a better place. They fled. Look, you were lazy to work. You were lazy to build up the homeland. You were lazy to get out the corruption. You were lazy to not set up the infrastructure. You were lazy as men. How dare you come here and talk about Black Americans, period, when you were lazy not to build up your own homeland. Then you come here and say you so hardworking, where if you were hardworking, that would translate into your homeland, because people that work hard don't have to go anywhere because they build up their own opportunities right there. See, Black Americans built up our own opportunities right here in America. We don't have to go nowhere else. And even if we go other places, because of the skills that we have, that we learn here in America, we can take those skills and build in other countries and put other people on in those countries and even give them jobs. We don't even go over there to take. That's the thing. You know, you flee your homeland and you come here to take. When I see Black Americans, I know several Black Americans who stay in the African continent and they create jobs and give jobs to those brothers and sisters over there. So when we go, we even go to break bread and even share what we have. But when we go because, you know what, man, I like it more over there than here. Some may say, I like this beach property. I can get it at a better price in America. This community over here, man, they my people. I like them. We get along. I want to stay here. I want to retire here. You know, you got some young men like, what's a young man? Like Austin Holloman. He's out there in the African continent. You know, he's going around doing his thing. And he said he don't want to come back to America. And shout out to him. He didn't found his spot. Nothing against that young brother. For that, I'm all for it. If a Black American gets to the African continent and he or she loves it, now you can't be stupid, because I see people be stupid. You can't be stupid and then talk about, oh, they scammed me. And then I hear the stories about how they scammed you. I'm like, why do you go out there with your nose wide open when you wouldn't have done that here? I don't understand that. Ain't nobody can tell me I'm gonna give you some land and I'm buying from me. And I don't check, triple check. I don't check with a lawyer. I don't check with the government. I don't check the laws if I can even own land as a foreigner. I don't check nothing. I give my money, hard-earned American money, to some dude that finessed about 15 people. Then you want to get online and talk about them people screwed me over there. They finessed me. Then you find out the story and like, you idiot. You idiot. You didn't dot your I's and cross your T's. You just gave money to some dude talking about he owns some land. Well, they should have did me like that. Man, they got scammers everywhere that's trying to get you. Matter of fact, I just seen a woman in Atlanta, FBA woman in Atlanta, scammed about 20 Black women on some house flips. Had them get business credit cards. I'm hearing them saying they gave her $61,000, $30,000, all these different money they giving. So scammers are everywhere. It's a lot of scammers in Black America too, but they go to jail here. But what I'm saying is, don't have your nose wide open. That's kind of silly. Even get scammed here like that. Like, man, it's hard for you to be getting money out of my pocket. Like, what, huh? That much money? Like, whoa. What you got going on? And then when you're thorough about checking somebody, they're gonna back off on you anyway. They're gonna back off because they say, because you gonna sniff them out. But there's no other people like Myron that talk like that. You can't talk because you're lazy. You're lazy. It don't matter if you say you work hard, you're lazy. Because if you fled from your homeland as a man, and you say, look how much I'm doing better over here than you Black Americans. You're not doing better than us Black Americans. Look at what you're celebrating. Especially Myron. How are you really doing better? Think about this. What, because you have a show on the internet? You know how many Black Americans got shows? What, you had a Homeland Security job? You know how many Black Americans work for the federal government? Even still to this day, they work in the federal government, federal law enforcement. What do you really have that Black Americans have not achieved? That's why I always tell them, like, how are you doing better? Okay, you went to school. You know how many Black Americans got degrees? Well, we do better. How you do better? Well, we got great jobs. And you know how many Black Americans got great jobs? Like, I still haven't found out how you're doing better. That's what I'm saying. Don't come here like acting like you're doing better than Black Americans. You're not. It's not enough for you two.
This is the quickest way to clear out stuck poop.
Magnesium for constipation? This is the truth about what it will do.
Well, I'm a doctor. I'm a lawyer, and we got Black American doctors and lawyers. Like, what are you doing that we haven't done? And why are you trying to compare yourself to us? Just, man, come here, get your paper, and enjoy yourself, brother, sister. That's it. You ain't got to compare yourself to us. Now, I know, look, I'm going to keep it 100. Some of you, success could be not living in load shedding. That could be success. Not living in water shedding. Having steady internet could be success. And the reason why you're more successful because you got steady things. That was holding you back, okay? So I'm just going to keep it 100. I'm not talking down on you. I'm just telling you the truth. Don't come over here doing that because that's not right. And let's call it what it is. Even in your homeland, there are sections of your homeland that don't deal with load shedding, water shedding, or anything because they got places in every African country that they live like Americans do. And they just keep the rest of you out of it, though. They keep you out. They got big walls, Donald Trump walls all around their cribs. Don't have me go there. Now. What y'all talking about? What are you talking about? Let me go ahead and get this person out of my chat there. Boom. Right there. Well, yeah, I'm gonna talk about Africa and the African continent. Yes, I'm going to the African continent. Yes, I work with people in the African continent. Yeah, I do. And let me tell you about that. A lot of them don't even like that y'all talk like that because y'all be putting a bad rap on them. And they've told me, man, don't be listening to them people over there. They say because they wasn't no good here. They said, think about it. He said, how is it that it's millions of us live here and we figure out a way to make it? Why do they have to leave? Why do they have to flee somewhere? They told me that to my face. Say, look at how many of us is here. You see us working. You see us with good jobs. A lot of us. You see us with businesses. I do. I see it. Not everybody over there poor and destitute. No, they not. They got Africans over there that got paper. I seen them. Not everybody's poor. They got middle class Africans. They got them too. Not everybody's poor and destitute. And they figure out a way to make it in their homeland. So, and I respect those brothers and sisters over there that figured out a way. Some of them come from very poor communities. Some of them may come from places like Soweto and places like that. And then they come up, man, they become a, maybe some investment banker, or they can become some entrepreneur. Some of them go into government. I mean, they doing it big. Not everybody poor. So no, I'm never gonna believe that because I've seen it with my own two eyes, like what people are doing over there. You got the poor, yes, you do, but not everybody is like that. Now let's get to the second video real quick. And this is the other spectrum that we got to talk about. Let's cue this up.
This is to my Black Americans. Why do some of you argue your African ancestral history? It's okay for you to say I'm Black American, but you can't argue the history of your ancestors. Ancestrally, you and I are cousins. We should chop it up with love and not allow hatred from the media or whatever tool they're trying to use to divide us. And also, Africa do not in any way, Africans generally, do not in any way have any form of hatred towards Black Americans. We just can't entertain any form of disrespect, any form of belittlement, from anyone. Because Africa is home to all of us. Africa is our home. In fact, I don't call Africa a continent, I call it a community. So it's all love, no hatred, to be honest. You get what I'm saying?
All right. So you heard what the distant cousin was saying, right? So let's go ahead and start it over. Let's go ahead and get back to
This is to my Black Americans. Why do some of you argue your African ancestral history? It's okay for you to say I'm Black American, but you can't argue the history of your ancestors.
Okay. Of course, we have people that deny their African roots, African history. Some people deny that. And you know what? Listen, we live in a country that you can identify with genders you wasn't born. They say they got up to 100 genders or whatever. So, okay. But I'm going to talk about me. I know that the origin of my people come from the continent of Africa. Yes, I know that. I know my people was taken from West Africa, like the area of Guinea-Bissau, definitely. They were taken. They was enslaved, shipped to Virginia, right? And sold in slavery in Virginia and was sent down to sugarcane plantations in Louisiana, okay? Now, that process was over 500 years ago. So we could not continue the language of the Balanta tribe, because that's what the tribe that my family originated come from, out of West Africa. We didn't know that. I don't know that language. I don't know the religion. I don't know anything. So here in America, we had to create our own culture out of our conditions and what we knew. You know what I'm saying? And we have a great culture. You know, we were people that would braid hair, but the braided hair would be actually maps. So when you escape, you can just look in each other's hair and know exactly where to go to escape slavery. You know, we have a culture of resistance. We rose up against the slave master. I mean, it wasn't all this, everybody was downtrodden now. Because if everybody was downtrodden, never fought back, slavery would still be going on today. There was so many uprisings. That's why slavery was causing a problem in this country and willing to tear this country up. You understand what I'm saying? We are a culture of resistance. So we became a new people. We came from different places. Some people's already here, and I understand that too. But we developed a new culture that we built here in America. We developed our own cultural food here in America. We have our own distinct history. We have our own distinct heritage. No one in their right mind will say, I'm not of African descent. Who know anything about science, history, DNA, etc. If a person denies that, that's on them. I'm not arguing with that kind of person. I'm really not. I'm not trying to convince them. They can say they descend from an alien. I don't care. If that's what you descend from, that's what you descend from. I'm not tripping. But most people I know, remember, Jesse Jackson was calling us African Americans, and black people was fine with it because we all accept that we do have African ancestry. So how is it that we've been called African Americans at least since the 80s up until maybe recently? African Americans on the government's form.
We just been accepting it through historical times, during the racist times. They just accepted it. That's why when I was bringing up the argument to True Historian and saying, okay, yeah, you keep pointing out Ethiopian. You started out with the Ethiopian regiment. Now you're talking about these Ethiopian minstrels. But you plan on the word Ethiopian because you knowing that it's portraying the black people within America. And just like you said, it was some black people here. But you know, they just try to like skim over that and still try to say, well, you know, and still go off the lookership. Yeah, if you look like an African, go on and say you African descent. What you tripping on? And ain't nobody tripping. But the thing is, what's wrong with just the American? What's wrong with a nigga saying a nigga ain't no motherfucking African nigga? I don't know nothing about Africa, and we ain't coming from there. Everything dating back here. In a place that's called America. But it's like I say, everybody's story ain't the same. Everybody's story is not the same. So that's like when they try to say, with the Negritos and the Australians and the Fiji Island people, how they try to say that, well, you know, they try to say, well, you know, them is not African. You know, they'll say, you know, with them it's not African. The DNA don't say they African, even though them niggas look just like the niggas. And the people over there don't call themselves Africans, but you know, they go with the term that was placed on them, Negritos, but they also, it's called whatever that country is and whatever that land is over there. Or whatever the Europeans call the land over there. Papua New Guinea, the you know, Australians, the all them little places where the Negritos is at. You know, they known by the land that they was found on. And that's what I'm trying to point out, or that's what I'll be pointing out, is the black people found in America. What's wrong with them being called the name of the land, which is Americans? But it still go back to this racist society, religious, and within the religious also, and how things was documented that kind of shape how black people, as far as like the history of black people in America, as they would say that we all got the same history, but we don't. We don't. But they try to say, you know, we all go back to a slave boat. It don't matter. If you black, you going back to a slave boat. But then when you go back and look at the history, and be like, damn, hold on. Some Europeans that's from Europe, and they in a new world, and they doing exploring, they in discovery mode, to where they in lands they ain't never been in, and they running across black people, and they finding black people. And that's why I ask the people, is that pseudo if they are putting these labels on people within the new land? Because they supposed to be calling the people the name of the land or that area, instead of saying, nah, but y'all not from this land, y'all the devils, and y'all come from over there. Because we seen some people from Africa that look just like y'all over there, so y'all gotta be from over there, y'all can't be from over here. And that is the argument within the new world, where they try to take us away from the new world. You got OG Smoke in the building. What it do? OG Smoke, no joke. So that's how I'm giving it up, man. I'm just getting up out of here for today. It's been a little 2 hours, 30 minutes. I'm even gonna go live today, but I got a little time to do a little something. Who's going live, and I'm gonna pop in. I'm kind of saying it. Go crazy in the show, you know what I'm saying? But no, I just want to put together. I've been putting together little videos here and there, you know what I'm saying, to kind of my perspective and what other people saying. My little couple of my little argument debate, you know, conversation with other black people within America about FBA and about heritage and about lineage and about history, and trying to figure this out. And shout out to everybody else that stayed on this journey that the Black Americans is on, delineating from Africa, delineating from the mislabels that was placed on our ancestors, and trying to move forward within America and get our reparations and just dues and debts that's paid from terroristic acts and crazy shit that was done against the folks, man. But I'll be back next time. Make sure you pulled up and rolled up. You know, I'm glad that you showed up to comment, like, subscribe, tell a friend, and do it again.
Order my motherfucking food. Hi, may I take your order, please? Let me have a double burger, some fries, some with cheese, nigga. Hey, yo, make that double burger with cheese. See, y'all make me shoot your stupid ass over that. Come on, man, we supposed to be brothers. What, you trying to get smart? Nigga, are you trying to kick some knowledge? Nigga, fuck that, nigga. Give me your motherfucking jury, nigga. Take that shit. You gotta pay me to your father, huh? Your mama? Yo, this is motherfucking shit. Really meaning the motherfucking cops, nigga. Damn, could be like just dope.
As I'm on, I'm on. Oh, yeah. I'm on now.
In the crazy. Times are getting crazy. Times are getting crazy. Times are getting crazy.
Time to slow down when they walk in.
Times are getting crazy.
Times
are getting crazy. Times are getting crazy. Times are getting crazy.
It's like crazy. Times are crazy. Motherfucker.
Times are getting crazy, the grind is getting lazy. So instead of grinding, I've got this bitch that pays me. Conscious fat, the jealous got me strapped. I'm a cold crushed cripple with a gift to rap. Born in the O in 1970, and ever since then I've been soaking game ho. Now my game is strong, the dollars come long, not only from my bitch, but from my rap song. Suckers stay back, cause they know I'm not weak, especially when they heard me in the 9 o'clock beat from the VPD. I steady get harassed on those damn black and whites and that motherfucking tash. They steady sweating me, they ain't letting me live my young life, and they smooth rejecting me because of young brothers from a black minority. They wanna lock you down in the youth authority. Honky, please, I'm out to stack cheese. Flip me a yacht to cruise the 7 seas. A Benz with a hunt, that beats good. A drop top Jag or a damn Fleetwood. Caddy, fool, a nigga wants to roll. Straight high side with his pockets full. Cause money makes the world go around. That's why on the mic, you hear me throwing down. I get paid, cool in the shade with a big fat split and a gang of bootleg. To get tipsy, or should I say hurt? Times are getting crazy, I'm gonna go berserk. Jealous motherfuckers trying to keep me at the bottom. Cause smoking fresh rhymes, they know I've got them. And jealous fools, white, older than 20, wanna sweat because they broke, man, they must be young British. Sweat, young brother, I'm 17. If you live in the crest lane, you know what I mean. They don't want to grow up. Shit is making me sick, about to throw up. Listen to the games I put in my jams, cause times are getting crazy for a young black man. Living a life with a felony record. And if you try to get a job, you smooth get rejected. Come on, my brother, let's get some shit right. Get it together and get your shit right. Cause times are getting crazy. Times are getting crazy. Times are getting crazy. Times are getting crazy.
Hey, times are getting crazy, man. You done heard what he said. How many times you gotta say it though? What is dope, boy? You know what time it is. Times are getting crazy.
Times are getting crazy.